All right. Get this shit organized over here. That's got to go down there. Holy hell. All right. There we go. What's up, Raul? Good to see you, man. Did my notification go out okay? Did you get a notification or did you just come check on me? Bruce Wayne, what's up? Good to see you, man. Hell yeah. Good to see you too, Raul. Donald Martino, Devra, right on. Good to see you. What's up, Dallas? You working tonight or home? Right on, Raul. Thank you. Ah, busy night. Right on. When I work by the hour, I fucking hate slow nights, man. I want to be busy, you know what I mean? Right on, Dallas. We'll be watching for you to pop in and out. Miriam, good to see you. Right on, Donald. Oh, that's awesome. Right in her pants. Oh, that's awesome. That's a good one. I like it. Was a Democrat until 2016, huh? Aaron and the Yeti are getting married? Hell yeah. I expect to be called for a minister's job. Oh, wait, I don't know if I'm good in New York. I know I'm good in Ohio. Is that national? Nah, it can't be national. I have to get some sort of a New York license. Big Mike got some splaining to do. Junk mail. Junk mail is the worst. All right, folks. Well, looks like there's enough people here. Let's get this show on the road. All right, I'm going to do something a little bit different tonight that I don't do most nights. I am going to make a fair use disclaimer. I did not produce and do not own the rights to the video and audio shown here for purposes of education and discussion. Swamp Song is my own property, and it closes this stream. Thank you very much. This is all information for discussion and education. It's fair use. You hear me? Fucking AI? You hear? God damn it. All right. That's my fair use rant for the night. And of course in the show notes below I wrote it. So you can watch that. If you want or not. Whatever. Fucking AI.
Get ready to hear the truth about America on a show that's not immune to the facts with your host, Dan Bongino.
All right, welcome to the Dan Bongino Show. Producer Joe, how are you today?
Well, thank goodness it's Friday.
It's Friday, big morning on Fox and Friends this morning for me. They asked me to come on and comment on the outstanding, excellent interview Brian Kilmeade did with George Papadopoulos. So we're going to have some of that, the Papadopoulos interview, and some of my commentary afterwards. But they were just... oh, boy. Joe heard the soundbite. The information released this morning was just incredible. Incredible. Absolutely just stellar stuff, so we'll get to that. Also, some updates on new packages that were just found, addressed apparently to Cory Booker, these new suspicious packages, so we'll comment on that as well. All right, today's show brought to you by our buddies at BattleBox. This is the best subscription service out there. Love this. Theory is right that this person may have had some kind of experience in this, and that these devices were intentionally amateurish, and that those intentionally amateurish devices were designed, of course, to inspire fear and terror, but were not designed to go off based on the faulty design of initiators, the use of certain compounds, the way the devices were constructed, and the almost "hey, look at me" design of these suspicious packages with the big oversized print, the excessive postage, the packaging. I addressed this all on the show yesterday. Of course, we'll get more information as the day goes on, but I want you to listen to yesterday's show if you can, if you missed it, because it's important here. There were only two scenarios. I'll just give you a quick summary. There were only two possible scenarios. Scenario number one was that it was a complete, total amateur with no experience at all in doing this, who had completely screwed up and left a ton of evidence behind. There are components of that, the evidence portion of at least, that appear to be true the way they tracked him down. But secondly, that this guy had some experience doing this and had intentionally set these devices not to go off. Why? I don't know. Hopefully now that they've got a subject in custody, they'll get some idea as to motive. But one more thing on this, folks, and it's important before we get to some other news of the day, because you'll be getting a lot of this on the television news as it breaks. It appears that he had been under surveillance, that this subject may have been under surveillance for a little while now, relatively speaking. In other words, they may have had an ID and a name on this subject as far back as yesterday, and that may be why the press conferences given by the NYPD, if you watch them, were so cryptic. We can't say, it was a lot of we can't say this, we can't say that. It explains 100% why the NYPD and the FBI were so intentionally cryptic. They may have been watching this person, meaning that they didn't want to tip him off to the fact that he was being surveilled at the time. It makes all the sense in the world now. And it also makes sense what I said the other day on a cable news appearance, that there was so much forensic evidence left behind in the form of DNA, likely in the form of fiber, in the form of fingerprints. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, the way they take fingerprints off at a burglary scene, off of a door handle, or a window, is using tape. Skin oils are left behind. That skin oil, they drop some powder, they lift it using the tape. The fact that all this tape was used in some of these suspicious packages and devices indicates to me that there had to have been some DNA, there had to have been a print, there had to have been some kind of fiber left behind that would lead them to this person. It appears that forensic analysis happened quickly. So again, a couple takeaways from this. Suspect is in custody. Apparently, there is a history of doing this in the past, which corresponds to some things I brought up on my show yesterday. Third, I believe he's been under surveillance probably since yesterday. That's why the press conferences were so cryptic. And fourth, we still don't know a motive. Hopefully, an interview will be illuminating with that respect, and we'll find out why this person did this and caused all this this major disaster on these threats in our terror system. But folks, I got a lot more to get to today. There'll be more on this in the news as the day goes on. I'm just again, forgive me for the scattered portion of the show in the beginning, but we're watching this break as the show is going on the air. We want to make sure we get you the latest information. All right, I appreciate it. All right, moving on. Now, the effort to pin this on Trump is one of the more disgusting episodes I've ever seen in my lifetime. It's gross. And, it brings me to another point, and I've been eager to discuss this the entire week, and we've been so busy with the news cycle. But it's important. I want to take this out to a bird's eye view perspective for a moment.
All right.
because there are a lot of people in the news, talking heads, some on both sides of the aisle, and I don't do that to distribute blame. I'm hearing it from people who are, Republicans who want to be peacemakers and liberals who think they want to be peacemakers, but they're on the air, Joe, saying, well, I think going forward we should seek some kind of middle ground, avoid this toxic political environment. We should all come together in a kumbaya moment. Folks, listen. Okay, great. Who doesn't support that? It would be really great if Republicans and Democrats, although ideologically different and willing and able to advocate for their cause, Joe, it would be great if we insisted on not engaging in personal attacks on the other side. That would be wonderful. Yeah. Point stipulated. Right. The problem, ladies and gentlemen, and this is what I want to get into now. The reason this is not possible in the current political era we're in is not because of us. And I'm really getting bothered on TV by a lot of these people who keep saying, well, it's the fault of both sides. It is not the fault of both sides. It is not. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the fault of the left. The reaction by the right is simply a reaction to far left tactics. Now, there are two things to blame for this, because I like to sum these things up in digestible nuggets so you take something away from the show. There are two reasons the left is to blame for this, not us. And when I say this, I mean this toxic political environment that everybody's saying, oh, I wish we could make this go away. This is getting out of control. It's out of control not because of us. We are simply defending ourselves against this onslaught on the left. And the two things they've been throwing at us, which have changed dramatically in the last 3 to 4 decades with leftist politics and the leftist media, Joe, are identity politics. And Joe, this may sound familiar. And the idea that winning ideologically is not good enough, that punishment is needed afterwards.
More familiar than I'd like to admit.
Yes, than you'd like to admit. We have discussed this before. Now, I'm going to break this down for you. This is why there is no middle ground. I'm asking the liberals who listen to the show, and I know you're out there, and the media figures as well. I would be more than happy as a passionate conservative to disagree with liberals on taxes, healthcare, the economy, and social issues, but to agree that you, in fact, are not bad people and that you're patriots too, and we just have a different way forward. Fine, I'd be happy to do that. I'll make a deal with you. I will do that the minute you forfeit identity politics and stop calling me a misogynist, a xenophobe, an istophobic phobophobe, an LGBTQ-ophobe, a Islamophobe. What else phobes are there? Race. We forgot the big racist. In Kavanaugh's case, right? Phobophobe. In Kavanaugh's case, a rapist. When you agree to put the identity politics garbage aside, because you know it's not true. You absolutely know the overwhelming majority, like 99.9% of people, you label with these horrendous slurs, racist, xenophobe, you hate women, all this. You know that's not true. Yet you on the left insist on doing it. You will not let this go. Joe, you know this is true.
Yeah, I feel it.
Now, again, I'm bringing this up in context of this suspicious device incidents that have been going on, because it's incredible that some people on the left, we need to tone down the rhetoric. You're the ones doing it. We don't call you guys racists. If we do, it's only because as Billy Joel said, you started the fire. We didn't start the fire. We didn't start this. You started this. This is your thing. We believe in big R, God-given rights for everyone. Liberals, conservatives, communists, everybody. You are free to express your views in the United States. We believe that those rights were granted to you by God and protected by the state. You believe they were granted by the state and that there is no God. There's a difference. We respect your ability to speak out. We will fight against it. We know it's wrong. You are wrong. We will be vocal about it, but we're not the ones who do the identity politics scheme. So again, why is there no middle ground and kumbaya moment like the party of the 50s, the Democrats and the Republicans of the 50s? And I'm not saying, oh, let's go back to the halcyon days kind of thing. Of course, there were severe political disagreements back then too. Yeah. But the era of identity politics, Joe, hadn't hit yet. And that's why you saw back in those days split ticket voting and Democrats who generally love the country And, a lot of Democrats still do, but the radical far left does not. It's the intrusion of the radical far left into the Democrat Party that has introduced tactic number one that has wiped out any middle ground whatsoever. Joe, I guess what I'm getting at, and please tell me this makes sense again as the audience on Buzzman, is it is impossible to meet in the middle over a campfire kumbaya moment, knowing the guy on the other side of the campfire is calling you a racist and a misogynistic, phobophobic, phobophobe. It's impossible. It is, however, possible to meet him over the campfire saying, what do you think the appropriate tax rate is to benefit society philanthropically from what do you think the best tax rate is? I shouldn't say philanthropic. It's not really philanthropy. It's encouraged. It's encouraged by the use of force by the government. But what do you think the best tax rate is to raise money for your government priorities and to encourage economic growth? That's an actual conversation, folks. There's data, there's facts, there's evidence, there's historical tax tables. We can have a conversation about that. I cannot have a conversation when I say, liberal Joey Bag of Donuts. What do you think the appropriate tax rate is to maximize, government's role in society beneficially?
First of all, that's racist.
That's right. Thank you, Joe.
First of all, that's racist.
I'm glad you interrupted me there because that's exactly how that conversation would go. I didn't even get to this because the second part's not needed. It's not because that's exactly how that conversation has gone for 30 years. That's racist. You taking money out of the government hands to give to minority voters in women's program. You're a racist and you hate women. What's the middle ground? I'm hearing this so often on TV. I feel the need to. I even took a note. I rarely do this. When I'm done with the show for the day, trust me, I'm done. The reason is I need my mental sanity, folks. I don't pick up, I do show prep, but I never walk it back in my office and start taking notes for the next day. I only did that about episode 628, the famous episode 628, where I spent an entire Sunday lining the whole thing out. But I walked back into my studio yesterday in my notebooks here, and I put this note: why bipartisanship is impossible. Identity politics and punishment. This note is sitting right here in front of me. I was actually in the shower thinking about it, to be crude, but you have a unique window into my life. So I gotten back from the gym and I'm like, that's why. And the reason I had Fox on Sirius XM on my iPhone, which I put on a ledge in my shower. It doesn't get wet, obviously. And I hear all these right-leaning guys and left-leaning guys who I don't think are living in the real world. Like, well, I think after this moment with the suspicious packages, it's time to come together. Oh, great, I agree. But how do you do that? When the left is willing to forfeit identity politics and disingenuous fake charges of racism, misogyny, homophobia, when you're willing to put that aside, let's go to the campfire and chat. Until then, there's nothing to talk about. Hence my own the libs. Because the only way to fight back at that, and by the way, for those of you getting confused about own the libs, it means the exercising of raw political power. In other words, winning elections. The only solution is to keep these people from power. That's it. Because they hate you. Until they stop hating you, there is no middle ground. Secondly, does that make sense, Joe, by the way?
100%, yeah.
There will be no campfire moment until they scrap the identity politics. No matter what happens, folks. This is deeply disturbing. I've been on it for 2 days, this package incident. There's no excuse for this behavior, none. But liberals calling for us for civility while you're calling for us to be aggressively confronted in public. You're calling us racist. We hate women. And you want us to come to the campfire and do what? What do you think? We're suckers? But there's another part to this. And this is the reason that Republicans see every election and almost everything, liberals as well, by the way, Supreme Court confirmations, almost everything in Manichaean terms. Now, some of you have emailed me and said, I wish you'd stop using these words. Manichaean means kind of like everything's like an end of times event. It's the simplest way for me to explain it. It's a great word. If you want to check it out, I love it. When I was a young kid, I used to take these verbal advantage classes. I really enjoyed them because I would admire how people with an expansive vocabulary were so eloquent. So when I was even a teenager, I was always committed to being able to. But Manichaean is a great word. We see everything as kind of end of time. In other words, every battle is is so pressing and so important that it deserves all of our efforts and all our passion. But there's a reason we see it that way. And I don't believe that was necessarily the case back in the 50s and in the 40s. Not to cry back to the halcyon days and act like, in the olden days, everybody was so wonderful. No, there were brutal political fights back then as well. But the reason people are so passionate right now about sticking to their guy no matter what. And folks, I bring this up because it explains the Trump phenomenon. Liberals are confused about conservatives, especially social conservative support of Trump. They are. I read the articles. I follow these liberals on the listservs. They're like, I don't get it. You guys and ladies claim to be deeply religious, but you support a guy who's got a flawed character. Ladies and gentlemen, the liberals are totally misreading this. Now, let me explain this to the liberals why this is. It is precisely because we view every single fight in end-of-time terms, and it is because you insist on punishing us. Now, this is going to get a little confusing, but it's critical you understand this, why there's no middle ground here. Liberals are confused why we support Trump as spiritual religious conservatives. Folks, because we've understood in the past that nominating people we thought were, air quotes, high character. And I say that because I can't vouch for their characters. I don't know any of them. But nominating them to run for president and other positions, that a lot of these people went in there claiming, Joe, they would fight for life in the womb, actual life, infants in the womb. They would fight for economic liberty. They would fight to defund Planned Parenthood. They would fight for limited government and big, bold liberty and our firearm rights. And you know what they did? They got into office. Not all of them. There are some good people, the Mike Lees, the Jim Jordans of the world. I mean, these are A-plus folks. But there are a large number of them who went up there claiming to bear the shield of conservative in defense of real people. Lives, Joe. Actual lives. I use the abortion example not to stir your blood up, but because it is a question of life or no life. It's very simple. And what did they do? They bailed on us at the first moment. I could give you 100 names of Republicans who ran as staunch supporters of the pro-life movement to get religious conservatives and who were probably decent people in their individual lives, Joe, but who got up there and screwed us over. What the left is confused about is this is the first guy who has his scars, folks. I'm not apologizing for Donald Trump's scars. I don't think he does himself. And I don't mean apologizing in that way. I mean, I don't mean it as a slight. I mean it in that the guy, his history is an open book. He's not been quiet about his past. We're all sinners, folks. The point here is that religious conservatives want to actually save lives and save liberty. And this is the first guy we've seen in a long time who, granted, may not be ideologically more deeply to the conservative movement like a Ronald Reagan was or a Milton Friedman when it came to economics. Okay, I get it. The pilings may not go, 40 feet deep into the beachfront there in conservatism. The point is this guy fights. He fights. He fights with a passion. Where that passion comes from, folks, I don't know. I don't know Donald Trump personally the way some media outlets think I do. I don't know, Joe. I'm speculating when I tell you I think it's his desire to win. Now, you may say, well, that sounds corrupt. Gosh, what, he doesn't believe in life in the womb and therefore he just wants to win? Listen to me. Do you want to save lives or not? This matters to me. This matters to me. Infants' lives in the womb matter to me. These are human beings. Again, I'm using this example, but I could use any other one. Economic liberty matters to me. Getting government red tape out of my house and my business matter to me. Allowing my kid to go to a better school because I choose it matters to me. You allowing your kid the same matters to me. Keeping the government out of the bankruptcy business, bankrupting religious conservatives who don't want to bake cakes matters to me. And this guy fights. And he fights, and he fights. I don't know why. I don't know why. But he does. And this is what liberals have entirely misconstrued about the conservative movement. Guys, you're going to back a guy who went on the Howard Stern show and talked about dating Playboy playmates? I want to save lives, and this is the first guy doing it. At least he's trying. We have been sold out for decades, Joe, by people claiming, look at me. I go to church on Sunday and volunteer. So do I. Great. So do I. What have you done to advance the cause of life and economic liberty? Oh, nothing. I signed on to a Democrat tax hike plan, and I've abandoned the pro-life movement. And we're supposed to clap because you're such a nice guy and you go to church? I go to church, too. Joe sings at church. Joe doesn't get any brownie points. How come Armacost is not elected president? Joe's a good guy. No, I'm serious. Like, listen, Joe's got battle scars too, but I know what Joe does. I know a ton. I can name for you a ton of people who volunteer their time. How come they're not elected president? Because they can't fight like this guy can. He doesn't need anybody's money. He doesn't need their attention. He just wants to win. Why he wants to win at this point, ladies and gentlemen, is irrelevant.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter.
There you go.
As long as him winning doesn't destroy your personal life and take away from your civil liberties, like me winning by stealing your stuff, the fact that he wants to win, listen to me, please take this to the bank, cash this check, folks. If this guy wants to win because he is the vainest, most arrogant creature on the planet, which I'm not saying he is, I'm just using a hyperbolic example to explain how little this means. Why do you care? People who were really nice people got into office and enacted Medicare Part D and almost bankrupted the U.S. economy. Why do you care? Now, I did not get off on a tangent there. That ties right back to this why there is no bipartisan moment right now. There is no bipartisan moment because not only is the left engaged in identity politics with vicious character assassination of anybody they oppose, calling them racist, but secondly, they insist on not only winning on issues, but punishing us. I have some examples here. Ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't good enough for the left to win a court victory on gay marriage. That wasn't good enough for them. They won this court victory, and then what did they immediately do, Joe? They walked into florists and bakers and tried to bankrupt them for not wanting to take part. Listen, this was a strategic misstep of colossal proportions by the left. Folks, it wasn't good enough to win. They had to punish. That is why we view everything in end of times terms. Because when we lose to the left, Joe, it's not that we lose a few bucks in the tax bill. It's that they want to come after you.
Yeah.
They actively seek you out to punish you. You may say, oh, well, I wasn't bankrupted. I'm not a florist or a baker. You want some other examples? It wasn't good enough for them to win on Obamacare. They had to make sure that people were actually punished by doubling their premiums. Do you think Obama didn't know this? Do you think they didn't know community rating and guaranteed issue were going to explode premiums? Do you think they weren't aware of this?
Oh, hell no.
Hell no is right. They knew this. They absolutely knew this. These were not stupid people. Their goals in Obamacare were clear. It was to make private market insurance, free market insurance over time so unpalatable that there would be a call for a third-party government payer option that would crowd out private free market insurance. It's clear as day. It wasn't just that they wanted to institute an option for people in the individual market in Obamacare. They wanted to punish people who weren't. That had a real effect on you. Instead of saying, hey, let's do something about people who are uninsured, well, maybe some direct subsidies. Again, I'm not suggesting I support these programs. I'm just telling you there's a difference between trying to help some people and directly punishing others. They did not say, okay, let's just go out, Joe, and look at a subsidy system for people who are uninsured. They took your insurance away. Millions of people had insurance policies canceled. Millions of people had their premiums doubled, in my case. They had to punish. Now do you see the case of social issues and the gay marriage front, the healthcare issue, how it's not just that the left had to win, they had to punish, and why the right has no bipartisan moment with them, because you can't sit down at the campfire with people who are going to call you a racist and then bankrupt you and then punish you and then take your healthcare. There is no bipartisan moment. That's why this isn't possible. We don't want to punish you. We come into office, we give you back more of your money. We give you control over your health care. We allow you to pick your kid's school. None of this punishes you. You lose nothing. Ladies and gentlemen, you want to pay higher taxes? You can voluntarily pay more. You like expensive health care? Go buy expensive health care. You love the school your kid's in now in public school? No one's forcing them out. The right isn't running against the public school system largely. There is no punishment for voting conservative. You vote liberal, you are punished. Oh, you need some more examples? Great op-ed in the Wall Street Journal today about Exxon. Oh, Exxon, big oil. We got to go after big oil. Shut up, dopes. You know what you're talking about. Petroleum company that hires thousands upon thousands of people. Right. That puts the oil in. I don't know Exxon. I have no idea. I could care less. I'm just saying there's an article in the Wall Street Journal today about how the New York State Attorney General is absolutely determined to punish Exxon by nailing them on some climate change thing. And the case is so ridiculous, it's like 5 minutes from being thrown out of court, despite the fact that Exxon's had to pay millions of dollars in legal fees. Again, it's not just that the left has to win, Joe. They have to punish. Mm-hmm. Kavanaugh. It wasn't good enough to get Kavanaugh out.
My goodness.
Which they lost. They had to punish. They had to make sure the charges against Kavanaugh were so disgusting and filthy. He's a rapist. Train rapist. Gang rapist. He's a drunk. He's a bum. They had to make the charges so disgusting that every single person even contemplating on the conservative front, Joe, thinking of accepting a nomination to the Supreme Court was warned in the future that we're coming for you next. It's not good enough to win for them. They have to punish. How do you sit at the campfire and not view everything in end of times terms when every fight is end of times terms? Not because of us, because of them. We didn't do this. We don't call their people train rapists. Merrick Garland didn't get a hearing. Sorry, we ran the Senate. Merrick Garland was never called a gang rapist, ever. Matter of fact, the Republicans said he was a very nice guy. They just didn't want to meet with them and weren't. That's their role, advice and consent. We ran the Senate. Sorry. Finally, the Trump election itself. Not only is it not good enough to win, they have to punish. Even when they lose, they have to punish. Punish. They lost an election to Trump. Every single one of them thought they would win. It has been nonstop punishment since. Fake collusion narratives, impeachment threats, threats of confrontation and aggression, Antifa people beating people up in the streets, charges of Nazism, fascism, racism. Every CNN, an entire network on CNN dedicated to nonstop character assassination of Trump and his family all day. It wasn't good enough to even lose. They had to punish. Folks, bipartisanship isn't possible because the left makes it impossible. And if the left understood that conservatives back Trump because he fights back against this, maybe you'd open your eyes and understand why the conservative movement has largely united, social conservatives as well, behind a guy who has finally said enough is enough. Remember, folks, the left hates Trump not because of his ideas. They don't. They're used to these ideas, folks. They've heard these ideas forever. Tax cuts, Obamacare repeal, none of this stuff is new. They hate Trump because Trump refuses to genuflect before them. He refuses to kiss their ring. He adamantly refuses to kiss their collective cabooses. That's why they hate him. They would have had a lesser man back down by now. All right. Good stuff there.
Yeah, man.
Good stuff. Really, I wrote that, ran out of the shower yesterday. I'm like, that's it. All these Republicans on the TV. Well, we need a middle ground. Yeah, there'll be a middle ground. Stop calling us racist and stop punishing us for every single thing. Maybe win gracefully sometime, and then we'll consider it. All right, today's show also brought to you. Excuse me. It was about 10 minutes long. I want to play a quick 30 to 40 second cut. And just let me put it in context first, because this is, in the words of Donald Trump, huge. This is huge. What have we been saying the whole time? That this is a push-pull operation, right? George Papadopoulos was set up. Yeah. He's not a Russian cutout. It's garbage. The person who I believe played a role in this setup, how exactly it happened is still a bit up in the air, is a guy named Joseph Mifsud. Joseph Mifsud is the Maltese professor who allegedly gives Papadopoulos the information about the Russians having emails on Hillary. He's the one who pushes the information in. The goal of the people who set up Papadopoulos is to pull the information out later via Alexander Downer and others to make it look like Papadopoulos is in fact currying in information, emails from the Russians. That whole thing requires, for that story to be true, Mifsud to be a Russian asset. I'm sorry if you've heard this 1,000 times, but this clip doesn't make sense if you don't deeply understand that. The left's entire Russian collusion narrative hinges on the fact that the Maltese professor who told Papadopoulos about the Russian emails was in fact Russian. This is obvious, right, folks? If he wasn't Russian, he obviously has no connections to Russian intel or Russian emails on Russian information on Hillary. Well, Papa D had something to say this morning about that, which was absolutely stunning. Cue up that cut, Joe.
We meet in Rome, and I never quite understood exactly why I was meeting this person at this university in Rome through my old company, which I now found out is some sort of Western intelligence front group.
What? Listen, I'm only laughing because I don't want to cry. Regular listeners know I have a fear of getting blood taken, although I have to have it taken all the time due to a medical thing, right? And so what do? I laugh when I get blood taken instead of crying because I'm 6'1", 230 pounds, and a 43, soon-to-be 44-year-old man. I'm laughing now in lieu of crying because this is only the biggest scandal of our time. Yeah. And George goes on Fox and Friends this morning and just drops this enormous nugget of information. So let me get this straight. According to Papadopoulos, he meets with Mifsud. That's who he was talking about. And he finds out he has no idea why this meeting is set up. But he finds out later the company he's working for that set it up has significant ties to Western intelligence. Folks, if you were writing a book like I did on this and you were fabricating a story, you couldn't write this story any better for a spy novel. Do you understand what he just said? He did not seek out Mifsud. He still claims he has no idea why this meeting was set up. Yet the company that set up the meeting that he was working for had significant ties to Western intelligence. Western, meaning friendlies. Meaning, Joe, for those at home who are having a tough time following, meaning not the Russians.
Right. Yeah.
Meaning somebody with friendly ties, a company with friendly ties to Western intelligence, friendly intelligence assets, for some reason wanted George Papadopoulos to meet with a guy who later claimed to have Russian emails. Play the rest of the cut.
Didn't know at the time. So the entire meeting with Joseph Mifsud from beginning to end seems completely orchestrated. And the most important fact is just a couple days ago, this man's lawyer went public and stated, listen, everyone, this narrative about my client, Joseph Mifsud, is completely wrong. He's not a Russian agent targeting Papadopoulos. He was actually working at the behest of the FBI when he was talking with Papadopoulos, when he was interacting with Papadopoulos.
Oh. I mean, we need emojis right now. We need emojis to pop up on the screen. We need the surprise guy emoji. So let me just be clear what Papadopoulos just said. So Papadopoulos says, number one, the meeting set up by a company he worked for with significant ties, not to the Russians, but to people working with us, friendlies. So they set up a meeting with a guy who then tells Papadopoulos about Russian emails, despite the fact that he's connected clearly to this company, because they set it up, that's connected to Western intel. He then goes on to say that the guy's lawyer, amazingly, incredibly, the guy's lawyer is now alleging that he was working with the FBI. Now, this is a stunning piece of information. Folks, if you have any doubt any longer that this is a setup, any doubt, I encourage you, one, to please read my book. I again, borrow it from someone if you don't have them. I don't care. I wish I could give away thousands of free copies to get the information out. Unfortunately, I can't because we have to pay to print them. And I have to pay a researcher and a co-author and everything. Unfortunately, there's a business side behind this. I wish there weren't. The guy was set up, folks. It is clear as day the person he met with, at a minimum, was not connected to Russian intelligence. Remember, Mifsud's ties. Just look up. Ladies and gentlemen, when you get off the show today, do me a favor. Go and Google Joseph Mifsud, M-I-F-S-U-D, Maltese professor. You don't even have to just put in Mifsud. And put in the name Claire Smith. Claire Smith was a United Kingdom deeply connected intelligence official. United Kingdom, not Russia. Not Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. She was a United Kingdom intelligence official that shows up at a training seminar with Mifsud to train Italian intelligence officials. So Mifsud is at a training seminar with a UK intelligence official, a friendly, training other friendlies, Joe. Other friendlies, the Italians, and yet we're claiming Mifsud is a Russian agent, the liberals that delivered this information to Papadopoulos. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe, are you asking a basic question right now? Which you should be.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. The United Kingdom, a high-ranking intelligence official, shows up at a training seminar to train our other friendlies, the Italians, who are friends of, they're not Five Eyes, but they're friends of ours. Five Eyes meaning the very deep connection, but they are intelligence partners of ours in many respects, shows up to train him with a guy who's a Russian agent? And nobody's worried about this. So you're telling me a Russian agent, Joseph Mifsud, with a straight face, showed up at a training seminar with a UK intelligence to train other friendlies in Italy. And nobody's worried about this at all. Remember, the FBI interviewed Mifsud in February and let him go. Why'd they let him go, Joe? If he's a Russian agent, why'd they let him go? Even worse, why did the State Department join in a conference Mifsud was speaking at in February right before he was interviewed by the FBI? Mm-hmm. There are only two possible explanations here. Number one. Explanation number one. Joseph Mifsud is like Evelyn Salt, Angelina Jolie from the Salt movies, and is so good at covering his Russian tracks that he was able to embed himself in a friendly intelligence seminar with UK and Italian officials to train them while simultaneously acting as a Russian cutout. Brilliant! Brilliant! Not only that, when interviewed subsequently by the FBI, when leaving a conference with the U.S. State Department where he also managed to cover his Russian ties, he was let go and the FBI found absolutely nothing. So explanation number one, he is the greatest Russian spy ever, on par with Evelyn Salt. I think in the Salt books, I think it's a guy. I think they changed it to a woman in the movie. I'm not sure. I didn't read the book. But if this is Evelyn Salt, Joseph Mifsud is Evelyn Salt. Now, if you believe this, I strongly suggest you seek a professionally trained mental health individual to fix you, because this would be the dumbest story in human history. He's a Russian agent who infiltrates the UK, Italy, the United States, and the State Department, and everybody lets him go. Yeah, that's only believable if you're really, really dumb. Let me suggest to you story number two, which is, again, Occam's razor, right?
Man.
Given all possible explanations except the one that's the most parsimonious. Someone said to me, too, oh, you said that parsimony means cheap. No, it means frugal in explanations. That's what I'm saying it correctly. Trust me. Give us the explanation that requires the least amount of assumptions. By assuming number one, Joe, you have to assume the FBI let him go, the State Department let him go, the UK let him go, and the Italians used him to train their intelligence officials, all while simultaneously assuming he was a Russian spy. Well, that's a lot of stupid right there if you believe that.
Oh, boy.
That requires a real whole lot of assumptions there, folks. A lot. Or explanation number two, Joseph. That Joseph Mifsud was not a Russian agent. It was, in fact, a Western agent that had deep ties to Western intelligence, and that's why he was working with United Kingdom officials and Italian officials and U.S. officials in the State Department at this conference he went to, or at least alongside them in this conference.
Nice start.
And that's why he was interviewed by the FBI and let go. Occam's razor. otherwise known as Keep It Simple, Stupid. Papadopoulos was set up. This is clear as day. And you got these conspiracy theorists, loons out there, like this Seth Abramson guy. Oh, but he emailed this Russian guy, Timofeyev at one time. So why isn't he arrested? If this conspiracy loon, Abramson, is right, why is Papadopoulos, why was he arrested for lying about his contacts with Mifsud? Which, by the way, however wrong they were, granted, are perfectly explainable. Again, Occam's razor. Papadopoulos clearly, when asked about his contacts with Mifsud by the FBI, this is what he was arrested for. He sniffed something out, Joe. He obviously realized these contacts were probably wrong. Mm-hmm. So the FBI asks him, hey, did he contact you before or after you joined the Trump campaign? Papadopoulos says before. Now, my wife asked me about this the other day, and she listens to the show, so you may be confused as to what happened here. That is not what happened. Papadopoulos did not tell the truth about that. Now, you may say, oh, that indicates guilt. No, it's perfectly explainable, folks. Papadopoulos doesn't know who Mifsud is. He was set up. The FBI intercepts him at Dulles Airport. He now says, oh, my gosh, who was this guy, Mifsud? He doesn't know Papadopoulos. He has no idea. But he knows he probably shouldn't have met him after the Trump campaign started. Why? Because Papadopoulos doesn't want to implicate the Trump team in something he has no idea what it is. This may not make sense to you. So he senses something's wrong with Mifsud, although he doesn't know what it is. And they say to him, hey, did this guy contact you before or after you joined the Trump team? Papadopoulos says before. Understandably, to deflect attention away from Mifsud contacting him because he joined the Trump team. Does that make sense, Joe?
Because
if he contacted, and Papadopoulos did not tell the truth. That's out there. He's already pled to this, right? But it's perfectly explainable when you understand that Papadopoulos had no idea who Mifsud is. Mifsud could have been an international serial killer. Joe, he has no idea. All he knows is he met this guy trying to tell him about some Russian email thing that he didn't bite on. We know he didn't bite because they have transcripts of Papadopoulos that are exculpatory, indicating his innocence. So the FBI, hey, what about this Mifsud guy? Did he meet you before or after you joined the Trump team? Oh, no. He reached out before. It's got nothing to do with Trump. It's perfectly explainable. And then the FBI locks him up later. But if Seth Abramson and his conspiracy theory nuts are right, why has Papadopoulos only been charged with a simple false statement? If this guy was involved in the biggest Russian collusion scheme, conspiracy to overthrow the results of an election in the last 100 years in the United States, why has Papadopoulos not been charged? The answer is because it's made up. The guy was set up. You have to be a nutbag to believe otherwise. All right. I got more. Don't go anywhere. I got more. Joe, we may go just a few minutes extra.
It's all right,
today.
brother.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
But this is important. All right. Today's show finally brought, meaning that the guy who starts this whole thing, who was alleged to be Russian, was not Russian. Was not, or was alleged to have Russian ties. His Russian ties were far subordinated to his ties to Western intelligence, and no one in the media seems even remotely curious outside of people like Kilmeade, who did a great interview this morning on Mifsud. Now, to the cover-up. Lee Smith has a tremendous piece in Real Clear Politics today, or Real Clear Investigations, whatever. The link is in my show notes at Bongino.com. Please subscribe to my email list. I will fire these articles right to you. I also have an article today at Bongino.com about CPL, the creepy porn lawyer, and Chuck Krasny dropping charges on the creepy porn lawyer for misleading people for false statements. So the creepy porn lawyer is having a really bad month. But getting back to Lee Smith, this is an important article. Something we talk about in my book, Spygate. And Lee hits on today in a well-done piece. It's pretty short. Lee usually writes some really long ones. This is a good one. People are finally catching on, Joe, to what the Mueller operation really is.
Oh, finally.
The Mueller operation, what have we been saying from the start? Yeah. The Mueller operation's what? It said clean up on aisle 4. Yeah. Mop-up job. Clean up on aisle 4 that the Mueller operation was designed exclusively not to find evidence of collusion. There is none. But it's designed to keep the attention on Donald Trump and away from DOJ and FBI malfeasance like their potential connections to Mifsud and others who set up George Papadopoulos. Now, Lee's piece lays out some really, really clear evidence that even lawmakers up on the Hill are starting to understand this now, that the Mueller thing is a smoke job. Here's a quote from Lee's piece. This is the new line of attack here that they're taking with the Mueller probe with regard to declassification of the FISA, right? Everybody's asking, why haven't they declassified yet? I told you it's because once they declassify, the game's up. Everybody understands that once Trump declassifies and pulls out the redactions from the FISA documents, it's going to become crystal clear. Papadopoulos and others were set up, and this was a scam from day one. Quote from the piece. They're moving now towards this declassification would interfere with Mueller's investigation approach. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, Mueller's investigation was set up from the start to create a secondary line of attack when this case falls apart. The first line of attack was going to be impeachment. That is not working out. The second line of attack is going to be an obstruction charge against Donald Trump if he declassifies. Remember, this is new. If you read Lee's opening paragraph, the DOJ and FBI fought declassification of these documents. They fought it. What was their initial reason, Joe? Their initial reason for saying we can't pull the redactions, we can't show the public the documents we used to go after Donald Trump. Their initial reason was national security. Oh, no, national security. Sources and methods.
Sources and methods.
That is entirely fallen apart. Everybody who's read this knows that the 20 pages they want declassified are not going to burn national security and are not going to burn sources. Everybody knows that. The DOJ and the Bureau management starting to see that story's losing its steam. So now they're moving to, no. This is the first time they've done this, Joe. This is important. They're abandoning the national security line and going, no, if he declassifies, Joe, it would interfere with Mueller's investigation. Setting him up for an obstruction charge, are you? Is that a little hint? The Rosenstein DOJ's dropping it to Donald Trump? This was a switch, folks. This is new. This is a new tactic. And it confirms everything I've been telling you for the last 6 months to 8 months on this show. The Mueller probe is a scam. It is a scam to stop you from seeing the truth. They are going to use the Mueller probe to drop an obstruction charge on President Trump's head the minute this stuff is declassified. They switched from their don't do it for national security to an even bigger threat now. No, it may interfere with the Mueller probe. Joe, wink and a nod. If you do this, you may be looking at obstruction. I'm sure someone has quietly dropped this hint to the Trump team. Now, I have a piece from this. This is from Lee Smith's piece. In the 178-page court document where DOJ officials are claiming, if you redact it, it'll interfere with the Trump team, it said that they had determined that disclosure of redacted information in the Carter Page FISA documents could reasonably be expected to interfere with the pending investigation into Russian election interference. Oh, how convenient. You've already set up an obstruction charge. Just now, last minute little curveball. They were expecting the high heat and they throw the curveball. This is how devious these people in the DOJ and FBI are. Here, this is great. It gets good here, Joe. That rationale has heightened suspicions among congressional investigators that the special counsel is being used to prevent the disclosure of possible FISA abuses and crimes committed during the Russian probe. Armacost and I have only been saying this for the last 6 months now. That's the whole purpose. Now, I'm so grateful that a lot of these guys up on the Hill are finally starting to vocalize some of this. That's the whole purpose of the Mueller probe. We will charge you with obstruction if you tell the public what happened. Do you understand? That's it. That's that. You know what? I just summed it up the best way possible. Dear Donald Trump, dare to tell the public what we did to you by spying on you and your team and Papadopoulos and setting you guys up, and we will charge you with obstruction. It gets better. Opened by the FBI in July of 2016, the Russia investigation was taken over by Mueller when Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein appointed him special counsel in 2017. Senior officials told the FBI that the President DOJ are at a standoff. Trump, listen to this, folks. Listen close. Trump knows, I've said this repeatedly, Trump knows what's in those documents, and he knows it clears him of all the collusion stuff, said a senior source. And it shows the FBI was doing some very bad things. But what's now keeping Trump from pulling the curtain back on the Russia investigation is the probe himself. That's the leverage the DOJ has on Trump. Nothing on Russia or collusion or anything like that. It's the actual investigation. If he's seen to be interfering, they move to obstruction. That is why I told you to be patient with this. Trump has political capital right now. He has political capital and high approval ratings. This is not a criminal investigation. I just read that quote. There is no collusion. There will never be evidence of collusion. It is the fetch of investigations. Fetch will never happen, and neither will collusion. This is a political investigation only. Trump now has political capital. His approval ratings are high, and there's a decent chance we retain the House and gain seats in the Senate. He has no need right now whatsoever to declassify or unredact this stuff. Why? Because there's nothing there that damages him. It only damages the Bureau and the DOJ. There is no collusion. Trump is waiting this thing out. He's waiting to see what happens in the midterms because he doesn't need to right now. His political bank account is high. If he loses, you can expect a full declassification and sunlight all over this disastrous operation to take the Trump team down, this disgraceful episode in American history. All right, folks. Thanks again for tuning in. Thanks to everybody who picked up my book, Spygate. We're still in the top 300-400 books on Amazon, which means a lot. We had some great sales. I really appreciate it. And please go check out the newly redesigned Bongino.com. My wife and Blair and Linda worked really hard on it, so go check it out. We have some great articles up there. Thanks again. I will see you all on Monday. It's been a crazy week. See you all next week.
Good. All right. Dan Bongino. Don't want the chat saying how fake the bombs were. Oh, we all know they're fake, man. It is just, the whole thing is just the most ridiculous fucking cooked up bullshit I've ever heard in my life. This fucking dude's got goddamn stickers on his car that haven't got any bleaching or sun bleaching on them at all. They're all brand spanking new, but he lives in southern Florida, where they would have vandalized that vehicle. The fucking SJWs would have slashed his tires every time he parked. Southern Florida, Broward County, home of the goddamn NPC fucking hordes in Florida. 9-iron windshield. The NPC soy people. Yeah, they're Rebel Alliance. I don't know, man. It's just the crap they expect us to believe is just it's mind blowing. The shit they expect us to buy into. Like, we've been expecting this for months. We talked about it amongst ourselves. There's going to be false flags. These motherfuckers are going to try to pull a stunt right before fucking midterms. And bingo bango, look at that. Oh. Hey, MJ. Alrighty. So moving right along into our next thing. I know he'd have been pulled over so fast, man, especially in Florida. Those Florida cops would never let him drive around with that unless they knew about it and what he was doing. It's retarded. Apparently, this dude was a Democrat all the way up until 2016, and he just magically became a Republican. Yeah, because he's not an interloper. He's not trying to infiltrate. Fucking idiots, man. Yeah, he's a spy. There's no other reason to have two different... There's no other reason to have two different social media strains doing two different things, one going for the Democrats and one going for the fucking Republicans. You know what I mean? Like, who does that? No, I mean, he might have set one up, but it wouldn't be maintained. You know what I mean? He wouldn't be constantly posting to it. Trump ghosts. That's right. It was an errant click. I didn't mean to click that yet. At a Jewish center. Yeah, absolutely, man. Look, the FBI has set up a bunch of shit. The shooting in Texas at the Draw Mohammed thing. They were watching them dudes, and they had people there on site when the shit happened, and they didn't even try to intervene or warn anybody or nothing. They just let it go down. And them stinking terrorists were smoked by the fucking security forces there, which I got to tell you just tickles the shit out of me. They had machine guns, and all they could do is get one fucking guy in the leg. It's fucking ridiculous. All right. So anyway, moving right along.
What a great honor to have you. Thank you. It is a great, great honor to have you in the White House. Thank you very much. They call this, as you know, this is Young Black Leadership, and it's the summit. And to have you here is truly my privilege. And we're going to have a lot of fun. We're going to talk. We're going to meet. But before I do, I'd like to begin. And you are leaders. You're real leaders. I'd like to begin today's remarks by providing an update on the packages and devices that have been mailed to high-profile figures throughout our country and a media organization. I am pleased to inform you that law enforcement has apprehended the suspect and taken him into custody. It's an incredible job by law enforcement. We've carried out a far-reaching federal, state, and local investigation to find the person or persons responsible for these events. These terrorizing acts are despicable and have no place in our country. No place. I've instructed authorities to spare no resource or expense in finding those responsible and bringing them to swift and certain justice. And we will prosecute them, him, her, whoever it may be, to the fullest extent of the law. We must never allow political violence to take root in America. Cannot let it happen. And I'm committed to doing everything in my power as president to stop it. And to stop it now. To stop it now. I have just concluded a briefing with the Department of Justice following the apprehension of the suspect. I want to applaud the FBI, Secret Service, the Department of Justice, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York, the NYPD, and all law enforcement throughout the entire country, incredible partners. These people have worked so hard, and to have done it so quickly, it's looking like it's a needle in a haystack. How do you do this so quickly? They've done an incredible, incredible job, and I want to congratulate them. But the bottom line is that Americans must unify. And we must show the world that we are united together in peace and love and harmony as fellow American citizens. There is no country like our country. And every day we are showing the world just how truly great we are. So you are really very special people. I wanted to say that before our little talk. And I appreciate the time you've given me. And Boy, one day, one of you is going to be standing. It could be 3 or 4 of you, actually. But you're going to be standing right here. You're going to be standing right here. I have no doubt. I have no doubt. Who in this room wants to be president someday? So it's an ambitious group. It's an ambitious group. That's great. Anyway, thank you all very much. I really appreciate it. For the media, thank you very much. I thought I'd do that, and we feel very strongly. Again, congratulations to all law enforcement. We have the best in the world, and they just showed it. Thank you very much. Now to the subject at hand. And it is my great honor to be with so many brilliant, and that's what you are, brilliant, courageous, patriotic, and proud Americans. Seeing all of you here today fills me with an extraordinary confidence in America's future and the great, great future of our country. Each of you is taking part in the Young Black Leadership Summit because you are true leaders on your campuses, in your churches, and in your communities. You are leaders. Leaders of the future. You're leaders of the present also. Remember that. You're leaders of youth. But it's really something to be your age, and where are you standing? In the White House. Not bad. Not bad. Not bad. And each of you is playing a historic role in making America great again for all Americans. We're proudly joined by the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Dr. Ben Carson. Where's Ben? Come up here, Ben. This guy was so tough, you know. I had to run against him, I want to tell you. He was brutal. He was tough. And he's my friend. He's my friend. It's amazing the way you can respect somebody. You are. But it's incredible when you run against somebody, you're fighting and fighting, and you're doing everything you can, you want to win, and then it sort of works, and you call up and say, who'd be a great guy for the cabinet? I say, what about Ben Carson? And Dr. Ben, he's one of the greats, and he's our friend. He was some tough customer, though. I don't want to have to go through that again, Ben, right? Well, I also want to thank my friend Charlie Kirk from Turning Point. What a great person. Worked so hard. And Charlie has done a very special job. You know why? He found somebody who's an incredible person. Candace Owens. An incredible person. In fact, Charlie may go down. His greatest achievement may have been finding Candace Owens. I don't know. That's not bad, Charlie. That's not bad. Anyway, 2 incredible people. Thank you very much, Candace. Charlie, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, man. Each of you represents the future of our nation. You know that. You are not afraid to stand up for your beliefs or stand against injustice. You refuse to be told by the same failed voices how to think or what to believe. You understand that. And you see what's happening with our country, how great it is, and how well different groups of people are doing. I mean, nobody would believe this. The Democrats are very nervous, I will tell you. They're, you know, supposed to be automatic. They do nothing for you, and that was supposed to be automatic. Not anymore. Not anymore, right? But you're not intimidated by the forces of political correctness because you embrace your own right to free thought and to free speech. History is fashioned by those like you who step up to the plate and get into the game and get the grand slam home run. I was going to say home run. Let's go for the grand slam home run. Right? That's what you're doing. That's what you're doing, man. That's what you're doing. I can live with that. I was never a fan. You know that, right? I don't know. Not everybody's going to understand. I was never a fan. I guess I proved to be right. But you are demanding a better kind of politics in America. Really are. One where those who have the courage to speak are not attacked, but instead really applauded for what you're doing and what you're saying and how you're helping people. For example, we are grateful to Kanye West. How about Kanye? I don't know. And, you know, Kanye was very interesting because we get these poll numbers, and a lot of them are fake polls. I call them fake polls. And one of the pollsters comes, Kanye leaves, and Kanye's really a great guy. He's a little different, do we say? He's a little different. But he's a smart guy and a good guy. And Kanye came up, and he hugged me, and he's wearing the Make America Great Again cap, and he said, this cap, I feel like Superman. But he understands he's really something very, very special and interesting, and I see why people like him. But he came up, and a couple of days go by, and the pollsters come in. You know, you're falling asleep. They're giving you the same numbers that they've been for the... Sir, what's happened with the African American community? I said, I don't know. Tell me, what's happening? I don't know. I wasn't thinking. They said, your numbers have gone up like 26 points, which is unheard of. So I think Kanye, he may be the most powerful man in all of politics, right? But Jim Brown, you don't know, most of you are too young. So I think if Jim Brown were playing football today, and you know, I don't know if, you know, does anybody know what lacrosse is? Lacrosse is a tough game. It's a great game, it's a tough game. He may have been the greatest running back of all time, may have been the greatest football player, Jim Brown. They say he was an even better lacrosse player. You've heard that. See, he's a little bit older. He's half my age. But they say that Jim Brown may have even been a better lacrosse player than he was a football player, if that's possible. In other words, a serious athlete, right? Big Jim. If Jim were playing today, take the highest salary of the NFL and double it. That's how great he was. He would run through him, preferably around him. You know, doesn't need to get slugged, but he would run through him, he'd run around him, he'd run any way you could, but you couldn't stop him. He was something really special, and what a great guy. And he's been there for a long time. He's been with us for a long time. And he sat and he watched Kanye, and I watched Kanye, and Jim's going, man, I've never heard anybody like this. You know, Jim is the strong, silent type, and that's good too. But that was a great day, having the two of them together. Very different, but they both believe in us. They both believe in what we're doing, as do many others, many, many others. Thank you, Mark. Thank you. And many of you have been attacked and called vicious names for being willing to speak out for what we all believe in. The conservative movement, and Candace, you and Charlie and so many, and Ben, by the way, Dr. Ben has done so much for the movement. People see what's happened. They see what happens to their lives. It's a movement of tolerance and unity and progress, and a lot of people don't understand that, but they're finding it out. They're attacking us because we are speaking the truth, changing people's minds, and proving every day that our policies work and that we are really doing what's right and what's good. And I get attacked also. You get attacked. I get attacked all the time. In fact, I'm just thinking, come to think of it, who gets attacked more than me? Ben, does anybody get attacked? I get attacked. I get attacked. I think maybe more. Maybe more than anybody. I don't know. I can do the greatest thing for our country, and on the networks and on different things, it will show bad. They will take it back because fake news. But they will, no matter what. If it's, I won't use examples. And today is just sort of a very special day because we caught somebody that hopefully that'll all pan out to be 100%, but it probably will. But today's a special day for that reason. But, you know, we all get attacked, and we're smart, and we understand where they're all coming from. And there's another word that I can just look at these incredible, beautiful, and handsome faces. See, today, you're not allowed to use those terms because, you know, they'll say, oh, but you know what? I'll use it anyway. Beautiful, handsome. Well, look at all these handsome faces. I'll use it. Candace, I'll take my chances on that, okay? It's not politically correct. We have to bring that back into the world of being okay, right? Don't you agree? We're gonna bring that back. But I see it. You really understand what's happening. You've got it. You know, you're very special. You've got it. And that's why you're here. And other people aren't. But there's a word. A lot of people are jealous of you. They're very jealous. And jealousy is a very bad thing. It's mean. It's nasty. But people that are jealous, they never make it. You know? They're jealous, they never make it. They'll be looking at you in 20 years, and you'll be at this plateau that they just will be so angry, and it's just, but remember, there's a word called jealous, and you have a lot of people that are very jealous of you and how far you've come and how quickly you've come. So I just want, it's an unfortunate thing, probably will be with us for a while, but that's a word that we have to understand because it's used against us very much. The word jealousy. The worst tendency in our politics is to tell people what they should believe based on their race or religion or color or creed. Right? Such a setback. We reject the politics of division, and we embrace the unity of being American. Really great. We are one people, one family, and we are one nation saluting one great American flag. And by the way Jim Brown talked about the flag the other day was great. I said, I hope we have that because it was beautiful. What he was saying was just incredible. As well as I've heard anybody say it, I've heard everybody talking different views, different everything about the kneeling or the not kneeling. Jim Brown, the greatest of them all, Jim Brown talked about the American flag, and we have it, and it was incredible. And these folks have it, and I wish they'd put it on because it was incredible. Our agenda of America First belongs to every citizen, and we will put America first. You know, we haven't been doing that, and we've been taking care of countries that don't even vote for us at the United Nations. You know, we give tremendous amounts of aid to countries that don't need it. We take care of military protection for countries that are rich. By the way, they're starting to pay up. They're starting to pay up. If you folks don't mind, they're starting to pay up. Beautiful. So, and then they don't take care of us. They don't even vote for us. We had a case with Israel where we needed some help, and we had like 2 votes. And then I said, you know, all these countries, we give billions and billions and billions of dollars in aid. And I just made a statement. I said, I want you to know that we are watching you, and we are watching you vote today on Israel. And we don't like what we're seeing. We've backed you, and we need this vote. And because Israel has been a great ally, we've done a lot for them, but they've done a lot for us. And in the Middle East, it's nice to have somebody that you can rely on. And so what happens is we end up getting 68 votes. So we went from 2 to 68 because we said aid, you're not going to get it, or maybe you're not going to get it, or we're watching. You have to watch. And amazing how that changes the vote. Isn't it amazing? But whether you're African American or Hispanic American or any American, really any American at all, you have the right to live in a country that puts your needs first. So we're saying because people said, I mean, I heard this one a couple of weeks ago. I said, give me a break. They said, America first. That could be racist. I said, racist? Racist. Why is that racist? here we are. I think does everybody in this room agree? You're living in America. America first, right? We're here. That is really beautiful. This is a beautiful meeting. I have to be honest with you. I go to a lot of them. Some of them I'm, a little bored. I do my thing. I say my words. I say bye, everybody. And I go and I say, it's all right. But this is a very exciting, to me, this is a very exciting period. Every citizen benefits from tax cuts, regulation cuts, and millions more of great paying jobs. Look at jobs. Every citizen benefits from lower crime, safer communities, and school choice. Every citizen benefits from reducing the price of prescription drugs, which we did yesterday, got very little coverage. I was told by a very prominent, congressman, I must say, a few of them, one was a Democrat, very strong, said the reduction of drug prices is more important than health care. And we're doing great on health care, but I've always wanted, it's been really a thing, and we set it up so it's so good, and we had a big announcement yesterday, and we are reducing drug prices tremendously. And it didn't get the kind of coverage it should have because it was a big thing. But, they also were competing with this story that took place that now our law enforcement's done such a good job, so maybe that can start to disappear rapidly because we don't like those stories. But we're going to be reducing the prices of drugs and lowering the cost of health care very, very significantly. You're seeing that, and a lot of people are seeing it already. So it's a big thing. Thank you. Every citizen benefits when we stop foreign countries from cheating our workers. That's what they've been doing, They're called globalists. They like the globe. I like the globe, too. But we have to take care of our people. We have to. Globalists. By demanding trade and when we have trade deals, we have to make good trade deals for our country. So when I took office, trade, we lost $807 billion that year on trade. Think of it. $807 billion. Nobody even knows what it is. What does that mean? It's so much. It's like, what does it mean? If you said you lost 12 million, we lost $807 billion. We want our trade with other countries to be fair and reciprocal. The reciprocal is very important because we have other countries charging us tariffs of 100% and more, and we don't charge them anything. And now we're charging them, folks. You're seeing a big difference. And every citizen benefits when we have a strong, beautiful border. And that's happening. And we have a big, as you know, they call it the caravan. It's a big caravan. And I called up the military. This is the military, greatest military in the world. I called up the military. We're not letting them in. They ought to go back now because we're not. Now, do we want them to apply and come in legally? Absolutely, yes. And millions of people are right now waiting, and they've been working this process for, in some cases, 10 years, and they're almost ready to come in. And then they look on television and they see people just walking in. Not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And we also want people to come in on merit. We need people to help us with all the companies that are moving back to the United States. We have tremendous amounts of companies moving back in. We want people to come in on merit, not people that come in and have no chance of ever loving our country, loving our people. We want people to come in and help us with those companies because the companies really, we have the lowest employment rate we've had in 50 years. We want to be able to get great people to help those companies. But we have tremendous opportunities, tremendous, big, powerful, beautiful companies moving in and coming back. And when you were a little bit younger, like maybe, well, for a long time, I could say this. I could actually go, how about 2 years ago? Companies were moving out like you wouldn't believe, and now they're moving back in, and they're all moving back in. Illegal immigration has been especially harmful to African American communities and also to Hispanic American communities by depressing wages and replacing workers. That's been happening, and it's been very unfair. All Americans have the right to have their laws enforced and their borders protected. We don't have borders. We don't have a country. For decades, policies advanced by Democrats have eliminated opportunity and wiped out good-paying jobs and even great-paying jobs for the black community. You know that. Think of it. Their policies are absolutely adverse to the black community. When I ran for president, I asked black Americans to give me a chance with your vote by saying, what the hell do you have to lose? Remember? Ben remembers that. No, I'm making a speech, and I literally had like 20 points about how badly black Americans are being treated, African Americans are being treated, and it was point after point. Highest crime rate, highest this, worst household ownership, worst age. I'm reading these points. I'm reading them. And I had never seen them before. They were so bad. The crime was horrible in the African American communities. So I'm reading these points. Every one of them is run by the Democrats, every one of those communities. Everyone. So I'm reading it, crime, the worst education, worst median income, everything, just point after point. Highest employment rate in the whole country by far. By the way, African American youth, unemployment rate like 58%, 58%. So I'm reading these numbers, and I just looked up. I say, vote for me. What the hell do you have to lose? Now, I'm going to be honest with you. So I finished the speech, and I got a big applause. But I finished the speech, I walked back, and my people told me, sir. I said, what? You shouldn't have said that. That's disrespectful. I said, what's disrespectful? What the hell do you have to lose? I said, what's disrespectful? And then I said it over and over at every speech. And you know what? My poll numbers, you saw, with African American went up, 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 because they started saying, he's right. He's right. Hey, so much for so-called handlers, folks, right? My handler said, sir, we don't like that. And I said, you know what? People like it. And a lot of people have come up to me and they said, thank you for saying that, because it made a lot of people think. On every side of the equation, it made them start thinking. So I appreciate that very much. Now I want to talk about what we have done, and more importantly, what you have really gained. You've gained a lot, and we've all gained a lot. I promise to be a president for all Americans. And the amazing results that we've all achieved, you've helped us so much in your communities, incredible. But the results really speak for themselves. It was just announced last quarter that the economy beat all expectations, growing at 3%, 3.5%, and now they think it could be well into the 4s. They just announced an estimate of 3.5, and these are numbers that were not even thought about. In fact, if during the process of going against in the primaries, and Ben, you understand this, if I would have ever said 3.5 or 4%, last quarter was 4.2%, it was 4.1, they elevated it to 4.2, people would have said that is the most dishonest statement for somebody to say that. So 3.5. And consumer spending is surging like they haven't seen. The African American unemployment rate has hit the lowest level ever recorded in the history of our country. And that took a big, beautiful, I mean, the change has been so incredible just in the 2 years. But think of that, that's in history, That's a tough soundbite for my opponent when we run, whoever that opponent's going to be. By the way, African American unemployment is lowest in history. I don't know how you beat that soundbite. And we're going to do better and better and better. But now we'll just make it better and better.
I vote Democrat again.
You're right. The unemployment rate for African American women has also reached the lowest number ever recorded. Congratulations. African American youth unemployment, which was really in terrible shape, those numbers, is the lowest level ever recorded. History. The African American poverty rate is now at its lowest level in history. So the poverty rate is at the lowest level. I think this is awfully tough for the Democrats to debate. Let's say we're debating and I throw a couple of these numbers. What are they? How do they get us, right? How do they get us? Candace, this is a tough number to beat, right? Businesses owned by African American and Hispanic women are growing at a faster rate than any other kind of business or business type ownership. Think of that. African American women, entrepreneurs. That's fantastic. That's a great number right there. Think of it, growing faster than any other business or business group. But it's called winning, right? Winning, there's a guy. But we still have a lot to do. The Democrats' policies, and you notice I never say the Democratic party. You know, the word is Democrat, but when you say Democratic, it's much nicer sounding, right? They should change their name, actually, but I'm not going to tell them that. I don't want to see all those cameras. I don't want to tell them that. But they say the Democratic Party. It's not that. It's called the Democrat Party. Doesn't sound good, right? I hate it. I hate to say it. You know, you're making a speech, and then you say the Democrat Party, and a lot of people say, oh, it should be the Democrat, because it sounds so much better. They should actually change the name. I'm giving them free advice. Change the name, because we'll still beat them. Their policies are no good, so it doesn't matter. Right? But Democrat policies have led to unsafe communities, failing schools, over-incarceration, which is a big thing that Jared Kushner is working on. There's Jared. Look at Jared. Hi, Jared. He talks about that, the prisoners, and they get out and they couldn't get jobs now. You know, it's one stat that I wasn't going to even mention today. It wasn't in part of it, but we're very proud. Jared Kushner has worked so hard on this, and beyond anything you can believe. Maybe he feels more strongly about this than any other thing you're working on. He's working on some very exciting things. But now, for the first time ever, think of this, prisoners, because the economy is so strong, for the first time, prisoners are getting jobs. And you know what's happening? They're getting a second chance. And I think, frankly, the African-American community, it's not a point I ever bring up because, you know, you don't associate it with anything, but except for the prisoners themselves. But the African-American community appreciates that maybe more than anything we've done. And maybe I should stop bringing it up. What has happened is the economy is now so strong that people are hiring people that got out of prison, giving them a second chance, and giving them a third chance, really, giving them a lot of chances in some cases. But I'll tell you what, I've spoken to friends of mine who would have never, it wasn't even on their radar. And now they're hiring people getting out of prison. And one of my friends said, you wouldn't believe it. They're like incredible. They're incredible. And I don't mean everyone, because there's no, even in this room, we probably have a couple of bad ones, right? What do you think? Are there any bad ones, huh? No bad ones? But, you know, some of them won't work out, right? Some of them won't work. But I'm hearing from people that it's incredible how good they are. And they are really, the employers are really appreciated by the people that come out because they've given them that chance. This one friend is beyond. He's doing it more and more and more, and he's had tremendous success. Now, that's a little artificial because it's done because the economy is so good it's hard to get people. But we've started a whole trend because not only are they getting the people, but they're doing a fantastic job. So I'm so honored by that. It's something nobody talks about. And to a certain extent, it's because of the economy. But now it's going to carry over beyond the economy. And it's really something we should all be proud of that one. Too many black Americans are trapped in failing communities. We understand that. And I talk about this. In the past, the black community has been promised everything from the Democrats, by the Democrats, and they've gotten nothing. They've gotten nothing. And there's been no incentive. You know, incentive is an important word. There's, like, you have an incentive to be great. You know, you see the incentive. You feel it. Like just being in the room today. There's no incentive. It's like you're giving, but ultimately that becomes a trap. It's all a big trap. While the Democrat Party, see, Democrat, is obsessed with resistance, we are focused on results. We want results. That's what we want. And where the Democrat Party has failed, Republicans have delivered, and we have really delivered big. And, you know, I've only had, it's not even 2 years. It's actually not even that close to 2 years. It would be January 20th, so we have a long way to go. And I can say, and I say it all the time, and I have to be careful because they'll always correct me if I'm slightly wrong, but no other president, no other administration has done in its first 2 years anything near what we've done with regulations, with the big tax cuts, with choice for our veterans, with what we said about prisoners and coming out. I mean, you know, hundreds of things. We've done so many things. And the economy, of course. And remember one thing, because I always consider him to be a true great, and people never give us credit for this. Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, right? Right? I was having arguments with people. We were talking about what the Republicans were doing, and I don't know. I wasn't probably on my game, and I wasn't doing so well, and I just blurted up. And I said it's strong. I said, but Abraham Lincoln was a Republican, and I won the argument. I just said that. Abraham, Honest Abe. I wonder if he was really that honest, but you know what? Let's assume Honest Abe was Honest Abe. But he was a Republican. Your leadership helps our entire country see that the Republican Party is growing. And it's true, it's becoming a vibrant party because of you, and youth all over, but because of you. And it's growing like never before. It's a party of opportunity. It's a party for all Americans, regardless of race or religion or gender. And we're fighting for the right of every American child to grow up in a safe community. So important. You know, sometimes you'll say, we want strong action, we want safety. And they'll say, well, is that a racial comment? Is that a racist comment? You know, we want safety. We don't want people hurt when they go and buy bread. And I've been with too many people. They've lost their sons, they've lost their daughters to just bad policy. And they're devastated, And then they go out and they vote for Democrats, and it just doesn't make sense. Never made sense to me. So, and I think the people in this room probably understand it even better than I understand it. Never made sense. But you have the right to attend great schools and to graduate with access to a rewarding job and a lifelong career. You want to, you know, like I think this room, 95% of this room probably gets up in the morning and you can't even sleep. You're excited by life. I'm excited. I am. You're excited, right? You're excited. But, you know, and it's true. You want to, and you want that. You want to run to your job if you like your job. By the way, if you don't like your job, if you don't like what you get something else. The nice thing is, see, now you have the choice. Before, people had to hold on to their job because it was not the same. Now you can really go look at 7 jobs, 10 jobs. You pick the one, and if you don't like it, you go to another one. But now you really do, because there's nothing like wanting to go to the job, and you'll do better because you like it. Each of you here today are very special people. Through your voice, your engagement, and your activism can help make the future of this country even better. Even better. As great as it is, as great as it's becoming, we've made such progress over the last 2 years. You're going to make it much better. You're doing something very important. You're really at the forefront of something unbelievably important, and you know what I mean. It's historic. It is historic. It really is. It's historic what you're doing, and that goes for you two. And Ben, I don't know, you're from a different age, Ben. Hey, Ben's been at the forefront, though, when you think. You know, he's a great doctor, great doctor. I've had friends that had difficulty, and they called me and they said, and I sent them to Ben, they said, even though he's now in charge of housing, and he figured it out quick. I said, do you know much about housing? He said, not that much. I said, yeah, but you're as smart a guy as there is. You'll figure it out. He's all figured it out. You figured it out, Ben, huh? But he was a great brain surgeon, and I've actually sent people to, just for reference, you know, like they have a problem, and you have given them great advice. You sent them to the right people, just as a thing to do, people that were in big trouble. Ben Carson is a special person. So you are all the future of this nation, I have to say that, and there's nothing you cannot do. There's nothing you cannot do. And you're not alone. You're giving courage to others. You're opening up their minds. And to start fighting, you're really fighting for real change. This is real change, and you're not even fighting for it. You're doing it it's like you're just doing it. We don't even have to fight for it. Once you're on the right path, you don't have to fight for it. You're just doing it. It's just happening. And it's happening, again, because you love what you're doing. You see it. You have well, thank you. And you have a clear, and I love you too. But you have a clear vision. It's a clear vision. When you do that, you don't even have to fight. But if you meet every day with optimism, I say it all the time, if you confront every obstacle with determination, never quit. Do we have any quitters in this room? Anybody quit? Not one hand. Are you raising your head? You don't look like a quitter. This is waving to me, not. Thank you. If you face every challenge with confidence and pride, really like Candace has done. I mean, I saw Candace originally with Kanye again. This Kanye is something, right? But just unrelated. And I said, who is that? Right? But you. And here we are. Look how she's like a rocket ship, right? Boom. Then there's really no goal you cannot achieve and no dream beyond your reach. Nothing. And you will. There will be people in this audience, I really believe that will be standing here someday. So do what you love, look out for your neighbors, care for your fellow citizens, and always keep the courage of your convictions. And you've got that courage. Never, ever stop fighting. Always do something you believe in, but never, ever quit. Never, ever give up. I know a lot of people over the years, and I went to a great school, business school, the Wharton School of Finance, a great school, one of the really great schools. And we graduated, and I watched the smartest and the less smart. They were all smart, but they were a little less smart. And some of the really great geniuses, they didn't make it nearly as big as others because they didn't know how to win. They didn't fight as hard. They tended to quit a little bit sooner. Never, ever give up. Never. It's the biggest thing. Never quit. Make sure your vision's right. Your vision is right. Make sure, no, it is right. I mean, other people have a wrong vision. Never going to happen. They're never going to make it. I can tell you right now that the forces are too strong. They're never going to make it. Your vision's incredible. But never give up. Never. I've seen so many people, such talent, great geniuses. They don't have that little extra kick. You see it in sports all the time. That's the great thing about sports, the metaphors. You see it where somebody's this great champion, and you don't know why is that person just better than others, because it's the heart. It's the heart. So you're Americans, and the future belongs to you. You're great Americans, and I have to say it's my honor to have all of you at the White House. It's a very special place. Think of it. Started in really about 1792. Now, that's old, but when I left China, I said, man, they consider this a modern building, right? I was with President Xi because we're making a very good trade thing. They want to make a deal so badly. And I said, you're not ready yet. No, you're not ready. No, I told them you're not ready yet. I did say that. They've never heard that before, but I said, But, when they see a building that's, a 1790 type version building, what they say to themselves, that's like a new building. So, but for this country, this is in 1790. If you remember number 6, I'm 45, number 6, President number 6, you know who that was? President number 6 was the first occupant of the White House, but the history here is incredible. And anybody to make it to the White House at your age, most of you are so young, it's incredible. You are really on an incredible path. I just want to thank you all for being here. It's my honor, and God bless you all, and we're with you.
Yay, President Trump. MAGA mofos. They look like dark alligators. Huh. Okay. Well, anyway. Here comes the rain. Put your hat on, the tires. Oh. You need to airbag the toilet seat. Yeah, I hear you, man. Rain, rain, go away. Come again some other day. Damn rain. All right, ladies and gentlemen. I downloaded a couple of things here so we could watch them and comment on them under fair use and education so we can teach ourselves and discuss the pertinent political issues displayed in these videos. Ladies and gentlemen, Katie Hopkins.
It is lovely to see you all here being traditionally British today. And I'm thrilled to be here with you all. Thank you. Oh, thank you. Well, thank you. Polite. I'm just going to move this back a touch, 1 second. Oh, may I do that without causing havoc? Polite, smartly dressed, wanting the best for your families and your country, working hard to pay your way, proud of your armed forces, proud of our beautiful Union flag, and this land of hope and glory. You bunch of racist bastards, you. It's funny how it works here in the UK these days, isn't it? Stand up for this country that you used to recognise, and you're a racist bastard. Threaten to harm British people or be linked to every terror attack in the UK since 7/7, and you're treated like royalty. I'm sure you all watched with interest Anjem Choudhury coming out of prison on Friday. I was there last night at his new digs, a bail hostel in Camden, to see what he was up to. And at 5 o'clock on the dot, he left in a car with a chauffeur driver and a woman in the car already dressed in a full burqa. Now, I mean, I say it was a woman. Who knows? Who knows what it was? Could have been damn well anyone or anything for that matter. Isn't it just lovely that we live in a country so tolerant and forgiving that we let Anjem out of jail having only served half of the sentence that he was supposed to serve, with him having refused to participate in a single de-radicalisation programme during his time inside jail. Now, instead of paying £50,000 a year to keep him inside the slammer, we will spend £2 million a year, plus his safe house and his cost of living and his wives, to watch the bearded weirdo lauded like a hero and enjoy his freedom. Extremist hate preacher types are, in fact, complete con artists, I think you'll agree. They stand on their pavements with their signs or in the mosque preaching away, persuading fellow Muslims to go and blow themselves up. Go commit jihad. Allah will love you for it. You will go off to paradise and you will get 72 virgins. 72 virgins. That's more than you'll find in the whole of Birmingham. You know, and I've been there. And I'm not one. Yes, anyway. Do future jihadis never look at the bearded weirdo in the white nightie, telling them to do all this stuff and think, hold on a minute, Anjem, when did your jihad happen? Have you got like a sick note from Gaines? Are you Bifchit, Anjem? Why don't you ever have to go and blow yourself up? It's the sort of thing I would be asking. And I love the fact that this bunch of nutters now get their own terminology too. We're not allowed to call them Islamic extremists. We have to call them Islamist extremists. We have to tiptoe around. You can't call the rape squads majority Pakistani Muslim rape squads. You have to call them Asian men from Rotherham. Or more recently, after the rape squads of Oxford, Oxford men. Ah, those learned men of Oxford. Don't you just love them? All that prestige and heritage. Returning jihadis is also twisted speak, if you think about it. You aren't a returning jihadi. You were supposed to go and blow yourself up. You're just a bit shit at your job. You're a failure, is what you are. I think Anjem is just a bit rubbish at being an extremist, and the fact that he's now a bearded weirdo living in a hostel in Camden is testament to that. He is essentially just like a paedophile, but with fewer actual friends. The London lovies who love him and live near the Bale Hostel aren't actually best pleased that he's there because it's near a school where their children go to. But they all voted Remain, so frankly, I don't give a damn what they think. And talking of Remainiacs, today we're bloody well surrounded by them, thousands of the buggers, crawling out of the woodwork on scaled skin to spend some time basking in the strong sun shining out of Alistair Campbell's arse. I saw him the other day, I think it was on Newsnight or some such, BBC giving him more airtime than ever, accusing Brexiteers of lying. Alistair Campbell. Accusing Brexiteers of lying and causing more conflict through our lies than any politician in history. Yeah, all right, Alistair, dodgy dossier Campbell. It's a bit like being lectured on morality by Piers Morgan, who, as you will recall, pasted fraudulent pictures of our troops doing unspeakable things to Iraqis that they never did. But how easily these boys are forgiven and their crimes forgotten. But we do not forget. We know the price of freedom. Many of you are former servicemen and women, or your fathers or grandmothers or grandfathers were. And it's all I ever wanted to be, was a soldier in the British Army. I went through Sandhurst as one of 30 girls, the lumpy jumpers, as we were called back in the day when you were allowed to say such things, and came out as one of 8 girls, passed out of the academy, with a 35-year regular commission in the Intelligence Corps, which my father always says is something of a joke. But I didn't get to serve my time, thanks to chronic epilepsy that I was born with. And as much as I'm a rule breaker, some say a ball breaker too, I can see that an epileptic with a semi-automatic rifle is probably not my most magnificent idea. But thanks to 12 good souls at the National Hospital for Neurology, 18 hours in surgery and a circular saw across my skull, I'm now cured. And so I live on to fight another day and fight in other ways. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's fine, actually. I didn't do anything. I just had a really nice sleep, like the best sleep I've had in ages. But I live to fight on, here with you at conference and on the periphery of the media too, where I've been ousted, telling the truths as I see them straight from the road. And I will be out there later today with the Remainiacs and that lot screaming for a second vote on Brexit, reminding them in my character Joan O'Brien with her wig that we already voted, and we voted to leave. You know, they'll be chanting, they had it planned, I saw it on Twitter. Hey, hey, Theresa May, let the people have their say. I mean, honestly, this is the intelligence, to speak to your point, intelligence levels have declined significantly, and obviously, all the lovies will be out there. Bob Geldof, ooh. Brian Cox, ooh. Matt Lucas, the great bold weirdo. Hey, hey, Bob, Brian and Matt, we already voted, you stupid twats. Got my own thing going. Gary Lineker, the crappy crisp salesman, paid for by the taxpayer, don't you just love that? He's obviously in on the action, as is every other rich tax-avoiding urbanite with no risk of ever having to use state schooling or the NHS. Because you will know, as well as I know as a mum of 3 children under 14, those are the places that the rubber hits the road. If you load a country with 50,000 people a year, and that's an underestimate massively in my personal experience with trucks through Calais, they sure as hell aren't going to be causing a queue at the exclusive Greycoat School just up the road, or at London Bridge Private Hospital. And rather than acknowledge our schools and our health service are collapsing under the deluge, what do we prefer to do? We blame our elderly, contributing all their lives, seldom causing bother, the real troopers of this nation, and yet held up every time as the reason the NHS is in crisis. Us very reasonable British types only have as many kids as we can fit into a reasonably priced car, not a bloody bus. A GP got in touch with me. He was sick of the silencing. He told me that he feels under pressure by his surgery. He can't speak out because of his work colleagues. That he's under pressure to write sick notes for migrants. That they bombard the surgery trying to work the system. And if they can't get a sick note from him, they'll shop around at the surgery for another appointment until they can get the sick note they need. And they know which doctors will even write them a sick note to get them out of sitting the British citizenship test. And that comes from a doctor inside who can't speak out because he'll be removed from his profession. On that note, actually, to those people who have failed to show up to speak today, I understand that we get death threats, but if you're not actually dead, then there is still a requirement for you to show up. People call me a massive Islamophobe. I embrace that, although I am only 9 stone 8. But my own Islamophobia came about when 2 jihadis plotted to behead me as a wedding gift to each other. One lady, I think she's a Brit. She asked for my head on a plate as proof of her new husband's love. She bought him a hunting knife and a dummy to practice on, which he duly did. And they were due to come and get my head. Some police officers dressed in black clothing turned up at my house one night, put an alarm in the top of my house, which I was to run up to, shake, if I needed assistance from the local constabulary. And as they left my house, they told me not to worry. So I don't, and I live again to fight another day. But the reality for those individuals who head to the UK is not some kind of chaos or confusion. That's a myth perpetuated by the mainstream. They head for landing centres that they know of through their network of contacts that are shared on their mobile phones. Friendly places that will accommodate them, help them get their little feet under the table, help them access the benefit where you can get paid cash in hand, which doctor will write you the sick notes. They are signposting illegal immigrants how to work this country, and that's all happening right under our noses, and my nose is big enough to know it. Sometimes the cover-up falls apart, to the point that even the mainstream media struggle with the lies that it's telling. And Grenfell Tower was a perfect example of this. It is a terrible tragedy, nobody is dismissing that. But good Lord, have we not heard enough about Grenfell Tower? Could we hear any more about Grenfell Tower? Channel 4 News just can't get enough of it. I was there through the night as that tower burned. I was there next morning as it smouldered, and I was in conversation with a lady who lived in the block of flats directly opposite, who I felt incredibly sorry for. She was unsure of what to do for the best for herself and her child, and she was watching people burn. It is a tragedy, but it is also a huge lie. The authorities say that 72 people died, 72. You cannot look at that place, such as it is, without knowing that is not true. 129 apartments, massive subletting, adverts for subletting that I have, 10 people, 12 people, huge overcrowding, designed for 600. Locals say twice that number lived on that block, and more were there at that time because it was Ramadan. I mean, who knows what started a fire with open oil fires at Ramadan, who could say? But the locals say that more than 200 people never made it out. Invisible people, never officially here, so never officially alive or dead. and standing with them, good people really traumatised by what they'd seen. That was just their honest recollection. At least 200 were missing. Grenfell was stuffed to the rafters with illegals and invisibles, a microcosm of its own, one of the landing bases for new arrivals in the UK, working the system, finding ways to make money from a government easy with taxpayers' cash, as evidenced, in fact, by the massive fraud in the aftermath, which hasn't been spoken about much either, really. £500,000 of public money was fraudulently claimed by people pretending to be victims of the Grenfell Tower fire, and just £1,000 has been recovered. The Crown Prosecution Service has confirmed that much of the money lost may never be returned to Kensington and Chelsea Council and charities that were duped into handing out the financial support to fake survivors. We heard endless accounts of suffering on Channel 4, and of course, Meghan Markle's sparkle pants turned up with a cookbook. How handy. Love that. But I met a little family at a hotel I was staying in on the South Bank, Park Plaza. It's quite a nice hotel. They were having a lovely time living there, actually, and were really, really grateful. They had free accommodation, free food, use of the sauna facilities, and vouchers for presents and clothes. And I asked them if they'd ever been interviewed by the media. They said they had talked to the media, but they weren't interested in talking to them because they had no complaints and were having a nice time. And there was a sort of sweetness about it because they were so grateful, and I was happy that they were safe, but equally it shows the duplicity of our media, that they will not tell maybe other sides of a story than the agenda that they're looking to follow. And it's a hotel that many of us, certainly myself, couldn't afford to put my family in for a week. And that imbalance is what we see constantly in this country, I think. Those recently arrived are somehow always at the front of the queue, and our elderly and our taxpayers are elbowed to the back, last in line for school places or on endless wait lists for surgery. I've met so many mums, and they email me, you know, to say that they didn't get their first or second or third place for their children, and they're in tears. What shall I do? How do I change this? I get emails from 80-year-old people, and it might be the first email they've typed because of the damn thing called the internet that makes no sense. And they say that they will be glad when their time is up here in the UK because they do not want to live to see their country fall. And those are really, really hard emails to get. But you don't have to look too far to see what this country could be like. I recently returned from Poland, where I was annoying lefties, and hobby. Poland has a policy of zero illegal immigration. It's now officially the safest place in the whole of Europe to be a woman, and it has had zero terrorist attacks. And one strange thing happened to me while I was there. I saw some girls just in their shorts and t-shirts cycling on bikes, and it was like 8:30 at night. It was still light. And I was struck. Girls on bikes, 8:30. And I was looking around, and there was something odd about it. And I realised what was upsetting or troubling me was I felt the need to go and look after them or something motherly. And it was the fact they had not a care in the world. And what upset me about that was not that they had not a care of the world, because that's a perfect thing. It's that I noticed. I was alarmed for them. I was anxious because I come from the UK where that couldn't happen. And that's a really striking sign, I think, of how far this country has fallen. They've not bought into mandatory multiculturalism. They've defied Merkel on migrant quotas, and they've defended their borders beautifully. When the Saudis rang the Law and Order Party, as folklore has it, to ask if they could build a mosque in the city of Warsaw, the Law and Order Party told the Saudis to get back in touch when they could build a cathedral in Dubai. I know. I've got to a point now where I don't care if that story is true or not. I just love it all the same. And it's this attitude of smart defiance that seems necessary to protect one's citizens. Smart defiance. You see it with Matteo Salvini refusing to accept the NGO ferry boats across the Med, bringing half of Libya to Europe. No to the boats. You see it in Hungary, where Orban said no to Merkel's migrant quota, and where he's just recently banned gender studies, which I love. I know. And you see it in Austria too, where they've said no to the burqa, and they will fine you if you're caught wearing one. And in Sweden too, and I've spent some time there in those suburbs where I was told to go suck my mum. I politely declined. And the Swedish Democrats have said no to migrant violence and no to the rape of white girls. And in the UK, actually, where 17.4 million people said no to the EU, and I will be out there defending that later today in my wig as Joan O'Brien. And no, I will not be silenced either. Smart defiance. You know, we're not alone, even though we feel it sometimes, surrounded by the madness of our time. We are part of a much larger family that is growing across Europe, prepared to show smart defiance and say no. And of course, we see it in America, where the lines for Trump's rallies reach for miles and the American economy is booming. And I will be over there in a couple of weeks' time campaigning against Mad Maxine Waters, and we will try and win that district. Trump will take 2020. There is hope. And that's where you come in, all of you. You don't have to, we don't have to watch this country fall. We can make a difference. Firstly, and most importantly, and it's something you guys clearly are all doing a good job of, we must resist the narrative. Just because someone said it and they're wearing a uniform and a badge doesn't make it true. We have to question everything that we're told to believe, because the real truth is seldom the fabrication fed to you by the mainstream media. After terror attacks in our country on UK soil, we do not stand united. We do not carry on as normal. Mothers and fathers bury their children. We reject the narrative. Secondly, we commit to arm ourselves with the truths. Sadly, in the UK, we don't have a Second Amendment. I am a member of the NRA, the National Rifle Association, and I wear that badge very proudly on my car when I do the school run, just to piss off the other mothers. Our police on our streets are armed with the equivalent of a bottle of Cillit Bang and an antibacterial hand wipe, and frankly, that's not good enough. But we can arm ourselves with information that we find closest to the source, from alternative news sources, not information fed to us through the liberal filters of Google. We find our truths on Anjem Choudhury's doorstep at 9 p.m. We must look for our own truths and help others to find them too. And thirdly, we have to find the strength to withstand the constant attacks that we face. And I know it's hard. Some of us, many of us, will have been rejected by friends for your opinions or your views. Some of you may no longer speak to family members. People can be incredibly unkind. The media can be merciless. But we all need to find the moral courage to stand strong. And of course, I have battles of my own on that front. I've been investigated by 12 police constabularies up and down the country. I've been interviewed under caution by the Metropolitan Police Crime and Major Homicide Command for a column in a newspaper. 2 men interviewed me in a police cell with one of those old tape recorders. Do you remember record and play at the same time? They literally did that when I walked in. I was like, oh, that's the oldest tape recorder I've ever seen. And I had a good speech for them that day. My barrister said it was the first time he's seen 2 police officers look more frightened than the person that was going in for the questioning. And obviously I've had jihadis plotting to cut my head off, and members of the public ring social services to report me as a mother in the hope that taking my children away will silence me. These are the sorts of things we face, and that's okay. I have no complaints. I'm not a victim. There's no self-pity. If I don't like it, you know, I can go home, sit on my sofa and shut up and become a victim, or maybe trans, and that's not going to happen. People sometimes say, gosh, Hopkins, you're a jolly good-looking bloke. I'm like, oh, yes, thanks very much, I am. But together we can save Britain from itself. We reject the narrative. We arm ourselves with the truth, and we find the moral courage to stand strong. This is our time. We will not let this country fall. We will get furious, and we will fight back for Britain, traditional Britain. Thank you very much.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Right on. Doon, doon, doon. Jeremiah was a bullfrog. Good song. Thank you, Katie Hopkins. That was awesome. Right, Claude. Yeah. Yeah, for anybody that doesn't know, Grenfell Tower was a fire disaster, fire tragedy, and it was basically a couple of rival Muslim gangs fighting with each other. And of course the media over there in England, they totally screwed that up, and yeah, it was a big mess. If you want to know more about it, I'm sure Grenfell Tower UK search will bring it up for you. All right. Let's see. Aha, here we go. This guy.
Joining me today is the host of Tucker Carlson Tonight on Fox News, now a New York Times best-selling author with his new book, Ship of Fools. Tucker Carlson, welcome to the Rubin Report.
Hey, Dave.
I am glad to have you here, my friend.
I'm glad to be here. I love this.
I don't know that anyone has ever walked in here and been more impressed by the Rubin Report.
Because I work in television, so I know what this is, and it's just the coolest thing I've seen in a long time.
Are you jealous?
Are you joking? Yes, I'm jealous.
You have millions and millions of viewers.
I drive across.
You have a massive staff.
But I don't have the control that you have, which is wonderful.
Yeah, control. All right, so speaking of control, I have only one goal for the next hour, which is to some point say something so ludicrous that you stare at me with that face.
I may do that.
Where did the face come from?
It's totally organic.
Everyone, the memes that come out of that face.
It's totally organic. The funny thing is that's just my face at rest, which is golden retriever-like.
Yeah.
I'm a mouth breather. And when I first started this show, I got complaints about it internally. And the idea was it's too embarrassing, click a moron. But I can't stop. I can't help myself. So I'm not a super self-aware person. I'm not a mirror user, for example. Because if you work in TV and you become really self-conscious, it destroys you and makes you insecure. So I just am trained after 20 years not to think about the way I look. And I didn't even know that I look like a moron when I'm listening, but I do. And I'm not changing.
Well, I know you're not BSing, because even just now when you were in the green room and my girl was putting makeup on you, you sat there for literally 2 seconds. You were like, don't do anything. You didn't even look at the mirror. You were looking at me. And
you can go crazy, as you know, in TV. If you start to think about how other people perceive you, you just drown in Lake Me, you know, and I don't want that.
All right, so I'm glad to have you here for a couple reasons. We're going to get into the book, and obviously we're kind of simpatico on what I think are the big issues of the day related to free speech and all that stuff. But I will be totally honest with you. Years ago, when I first saw you on Crossfire on CNN, I was not a fan. Now I was.
You weren't alone in that.
I thought, here's this bow tie wearing guy who was, seemingly kind of smug and whatever. And I was a lefty at the time, so we were really polar opposites politically.
Yeah.
But everything has shifted enough that we are kind of allies now, and I actually think that's kind of cool. So before we do anything else, Tell me about little Tucker Carlson. People know about Tucker Carlson that eviscerates socialists all day.
What was I like as a kid?
Yeah.
Well, I grew up here in Southern
yeah.
California, and we lived in Studio City. And I mean, I think I've always been the same, anti-authoritarian, for the individual, against the group. I hate bullies. I hate being bullied more than anything. And so I found myself, and I've always been this way, in a scenario where everyone is forced to sort of nod in bovine agreement about something, my instinct is always to be the one guy who's like, no. And so I haven't changed at all. The particulars of my political beliefs have changed because America has changed so dramatically. I'm 49, so in the last 40 years, it's become a different country. And a lot of the things that I thought would work haven't worked. A lot of the things I thought were not threatening turned out to be threatening. So, you know, my views have changed, but my instincts have remained, I think, consistent over time.
Yeah. Were you always political, or were your parents
I was
political?
always political.
Yeah?
Well, I was always interested in history. Mm-hmm. And my father was a non-conformist, I would say. I mean, that's an understatement. And his baseline position was, just because everybody says it doesn't mean it's true. And the answers to the way people are found in history, because the one immutable fact of history is human nature. Like, it literally does not change. And you see consistent themes over time. And so if you want to understand what's happening, look backward, and you will, I mean, just pretty conventional stuff, but now it sounds kind of radical. But basically, my main influence was my dad. I grew up with my dad and my brother. And again, his view was, you know, just because all the chin tuggers are saying it does not prove it.
Yeah. Does that seem like a pretty obvious through line to your success right now? Because it's like every day there is some other groupthink, lunacy that it's like, these people then go on your show, and I always think it's hilarious because it's like, do they know what they're getting into? You know what I mean? It's like,
well, yeah,
they think they're going to beat you, and...
Well, but they don't actually have the same goals for the debate that I do. So I'm linear and literal and old-fashioned, and I go into it, you know, believing that I can win the person over with superior reasoning, or, you know, a larger and more compelling fact set, or whatever. They're coming to this believing they've already won because they have superior virtue. So they're having a theological conversation. I'm having a political debate, and too often we talk right past each other.
Yeah, that's interesting. A theological conversation. A couple of people have mentioned on the show. My friend Peter Boghossian, who's a philosophy professor who's been on a few times, he calls this sort of new leftism a secular religion.
Of course.
Do you view that?
Look, I'm an Episcopalian, so I know what happened, because the Episcopal Church was the church of America's ruling class. Our National Cathedral is an Episcopal church. So our culture was rooted in mainline Protestantism. I mean, this was a Protestant country. And our rulers, whether they were like literally Protestant or not, internalized the values of that faith. And then within like a 20-year period, the faith evaporated. The Episcopal Church barely exists anymore. And certainly as a national force, it's irrelevant. But that didn't eliminate the religious impulse within people, which is inherent. It's innate. We're born that way. We worship something in the end. Whether, you know, it doesn't need to be God. And so they've transferred that religious impulse to the political sphere. They're making the same arguments that 19th century Protestants made, especially the Calvinists. Like, I am saved. Like, I know this. That's my baseline assumption. I'm one of God's elect. You are not. Mm-hmm. If you go into any conversation like that, nothing will be resolved because it's already been decided.
Yeah. Well, it's good versus evil. And it's like,
exactly.
Why
That's
would
exactly
you
what it
that?
is.
Yeah. Was it always like this, though?
No, it wasn't like. Well,
so what? Give me some markers of when you saw things kind of start to change.
I mean, I'm kind of, you know, I'm not an intellectual. I'm a talk show host, so I'm a little.
Well, now we have our promo clip.
Right. Well, it's true. I mean, that's what I do. So it took me a while to see the outline. I mean, this all comes kind of slowly to me because I'm caught in an earlier time just by virtue of my age. And so I would have these conversations that were confusing to me, where you would be debating a so-called liberal, and I would find myself taking the liberal side, like in favor of free speech, or my default suspicion of corporate power, or concentrations of power anywhere, because it's a threat to the individual, or in favor of due process, or, you know, I would take a position that I heard liberals of my childhood take, and the liberal I'm debating would be like, nope, you know, if Google says it, it's true. Or, you know, if you're accused, prove yourself innocent. Or if what you say is offensive, you don't have a right to say it. I'd be like, wait a second. this is a mirror image of what I grew up with. So actually, to answer your question as honestly as I can, I don't know if they ever really meant what they said. I really don't. It's possible that the pursuit of power and the empowerment of the Democratic Party was always the goal, and that was just the disguise they used in order to achieve it in 1979. I don't know the answer.
Yeah. Do you think we'd be in a healthier situation if there was a sane Democratic Party, even if all the policies were against everything that Tucker Carlson believes? Yeah.
That's the point of my book. The feng shui is off. So for like 100 years, you had one party, which was the corporate party, the Republican Party, the country club party, the party of the ruling class. And the other party existed in effect to keep it in check. And to say, wait a second, you know, you're getting rich because all these people are working really hard. So you need to think about their interests. And a bunch of different things happened. The value of labor dropped because of technology to the point where it's not even worth representing the working class because they're not worth anything, actually. This was the calculation of the Democratic Party. And so basically what you have is this weird alignment where the leadership of the Republican Party represents corporate interests and the leadership of the Democratic Party represents corporate interests. And there's no one to represent the middle class. And that, again, the balance is off. You need a vigorous party standing up and saying, whoa, wait a second, you need balance. Always you need balance.
Yeah, so is that the part of this that's sort of scary for our future, and that's kind of what you're going for in the book, is that if one side completely implodes, which it seems more likely as we're taping this at the moment, that the Democrats are just going to absolutely implode, that it's not as if all the conservative policies that you might like would suddenly take root. It's that we would actually tilt in some really bizarre...
Exactly. That's exactly right. I mean, this is why marriage as an institution works, because there's like another person pushing back against your bad instincts or balancing you out, you know? And what's true at home is probably true on a national scale, on a political scale. And yes, you absolutely need a vigorous and principled opposition party always, or else you've got something really ugly. Then you've got the monoparty, which is kind of what we have.
Yeah, you know Jordan Peterson, who I know you admire also.
I do.
One of the lines when he's talking about politics, it's interesting you brought up marriage. He'll always say, you know, it's like a fight with your spouse. You don't want to beat them because then you're married to a loser. You want to give them a chance to figure out something so that you'll be able to move forward. And, and we seem at this, we're at this odd place right now where it's like one side is trying to beat the other side is trying to beat the other side, and the rest of us, which I think is actually most of us, are just like...
That's true. You don't want to beat your spouse because you're married to a loser, but you're also a loser if you're married to a loser. The point is, you're implicated in the future of the other side because in the end, you're all in this together, even though you're coming from it from different perspectives. So we're all Americans. So in the same way that crushing your spouse doesn't actually win you any kind of meaningful victory or a victory you'd want, crushing your fellow Americans doesn't improve your life or your country. So like, you don't want any of this. I totally agree.
It's going to lead to something really bad, actually.
Really ugly. And everybody who's paying any kind of attention senses it on an animal level. This is moving in a really ominous direction.
So I know we could talk about why we're frustrated with the Democrats all day long and all that, but let's put that aside because I feel like that's a little bit of low-hanging fruit, and we both do it. We do it enough.
Too much.
So let's talk more about the Republicans.
Yes.
So tell me some of your frustrations with the Republican Party.
It's really simple. The Democratic Party was for 80, probably close to 100 years, the party of wage earners. And sometime in the last, I would say 15 years, probably at the end of the Clinton, right at the kind of apex of the tech boom in the late 90s, the Clinton administration decided to reorient the party away from its traditional base to its new base, which is the rich and the poor. And the Republican Party, being dumb, didn't see this. And it was only the emergence of Trump that forced them to sort of realize that, wait a second, we don't represent the people we thought we represented, actually. It was the country club party. They denied it. They hated that line because it was true. I mean, it's the things that are true that we hate to hear.
That we hate the most, yeah.
Right. But we now need to become the middle class party. Well, they just didn't want to become the middle class party, actually, at all. And it took Trump. I mean, Trump is a flawed person, not a complex person, but a flawed person.
We'll get to that.
Right. Okay. So, but he basically has forced the Republican Party to be what it in effect already is, the party of last resort for people making, $50,000 to $150,000 a year. The people who are making enough not to be on welfare, but not enough to send their kids to summer camp. That's the core of the country. And they don't want to represent those people. And so to me, and by the way, I'm not one of those people. I'm not here to give you the view from coal country at all. I grew up in La Jolla and Georgetown. So but I know less about what the middle class thinks. I know a lot about what the ruling class thinks, having lived in it my whole life. And they hate, the leadership of the Republican Party hates the American middle class and has contempt for them. And that's infuriating.
What does it say, though, that Trump, who's not one of them, seems to care about them? You, who's not one of them, seems to care about them. Me, grew up I've only lived in New York and L.A.
Yeah, exactly.
I care about them. What is that? Why has there been such a shift that almost seems impossible?
Well, I mean,
that Trump would be the hero of these people.
But that's exactly the last time we had something like this, of course, was in the progressive era. Teddy Roosevelt, really the pivotal president of post-Civil War America, I would argue, who made this a capitalist country by restraining capitalism. The Romanovs didn't do that, and they got 70 years of Bolshevism, right? Yeah. But Roosevelt, who really was a genius, was like, wait a second, the concentrations of corporate power are so scary, they're going to overwhelm the democracy, and we're going to have a counter-reaction, and the Wobblies are going to take power. So Roosevelt was the last person to fill this role, and he was exactly the same, similar to Trump. He wasn't throwing chairs through the window into the country club. He was throwing them out onto the street. Like, he was from the class that he was trying to restrain. And you sort of have to be. Like, he knew what they were like because he was one of them. I don't know, there's something but I would just say for me, it always goes back to, I have greater sympathy for the lone guy who's getting pushed around than I do for the group that's pushing him around. So I feel like right now, the least popular group in America lives in the Middle West, and they have kind of antiquated social attitudes, and they have very little economic power, and they're overweight, and everyone hates them. And I feel like, really, because they're Americans, actually. Like, what is this? By the way, if they were doing this to black people or Hispanics or any group, I would be sympathetic, because I hate that.
Yeah, and I'm actually not even sure that when it comes to some of the social stuff that their views are that antiquated.
I agree. I
think they've changed, and I can see this from going across the country.
You would know.
People don't, they want you to live however you are. They don't want you to come on their property and take their stuff, and you can't punch them walking down the street.
You're like, hey, I'm the liberal gay guy from New York, and they're like, we love you.
Well, yeah.
No, I mean, I totally agree, actually.
Yeah.
But in the kind of, cliche-controlled mind of your average Brooklyn intellectual, they're all, medieval. But they're not, actually. They're basically libertarian in temperament. They always have been.
Yeah. So what is Trump, then? You've interviewed the guy a bunch of times.
I know him well.
Yeah. What actually, in the scheme of what your book is about and sort of where America's at the moment, is he just the great wrecker that we sort of needed so that this ship of fools wasn't going to sink and take everybody down?
Well, he's certainly a wrecker. Look, here's what Trump is not. Trump is not the guy who comes to Washington and transforms the system, because he's not capable of that. He's not interested in that. Washington is a very specific town, okay? So, like, the legislative process is highly complex. He doesn't understand it, doesn't seek to. He's not going to be the guy who runs on these 9 policies and then affects them once elected, gets them through the Congress, gets them through the agencies. He can't. That's not his role. It's very frustrating, actually, if you're from D.C. like me, to watch it. You're like, wow, what a second, get the energy department under control. Not going to happen. There's 3 million executive branch employees versus Trump, okay? Yeah. Trump's role is...
Is that right? That's not right. There's 3 million?
3 million executive... I think there are 3 million executive branch employees. That may include the military, by the way, so it's not quite right. But I'm just saying, like... The permanent class in D.C., and I live right in the center of them, they hate Trump. He's a threat to them. But why do they hate him? They hate him not because he's a right-winger. He's hardly a right-winger, actually. They hate him because he's the guy who says the obvious things. So, like, we went to Helsinki last summer and interviewed him during the Putin thing. And this crystallized for me in this conversation I had with him off camera. I said to him, I'm going to ask you about NATO. And he goes, why do we have NATO? And as someone who's like a Cold War kid, I was like, well, I like NATO. I'm thinking to myself, and he goes, the Soviet Union, fell in 1991. Wasn't the point of NATO to keep them from invading Western Europe? But they don't exist anymore. Why do we still have them? And I'm searching for a good answer, and I couldn't find one. So Trump repeats this in public, and everyone's like, well, shut up. What are you working for, Putin? And I thought, this is what Trump does. He comes in his kind of autistic way and asks the obvious question at the core of whatever the issue is, that is the one question everyone's been avoiding because they don't have the answer to it.
Yeah.
So, like, well, why are we signing a trade agreement and letting the other signatories ignore the terms? don't know. Why don't we have a border? I don't know. These are like not complex questions. They're very obvious questions. But because they are unanswered and unanswerable in some cases, they expose sort of the mediocrity of our ruling class. Like they actually don't know what they're doing, is the truth.
All right, so I have a lot of friends, I think you know some of them, who think that this thing that you're talking about with Trump is a sort of existential threat to the system. That this erraticness, this idea of you just throw the idea out there and then let it sort of ruminate and see what happens, that is just too dangerous to play ball with. Yeah. I suspect you disagree with that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think you want, populism is a threat to everything that we have. I'm not a populist at all. And I think but I think populism arises as a symptom of discontent that you need to address in a democracy if you want to continue the democracy. So I don't want to live in a country this volatile anymore. Nobody does. But I think in order to solve the problems, you have to name them. You know, I'm not one of these guys who's like, I believe in creative destruction. It's very easy to destroy things, very hard to build them. Yeah. You know, it's incremental effort over time that builds things. So no, I mean, look, I understand the complaint 100%, but I also think it's a two-way deal here. So if I say, hey, Dave, you know, like, did you pay for this house? And you're like, that's the one thing I don't want to talk about because actually you didn't. You're just squatting here. Yeah. Whose fault is that? I mean, I guess, you know, I'm disruptive for asking you the question, but you also should pay for the house. Do you know what I mean? So like, he's calling BS on them. I get why they don't like it, but it also is a call to action to them to like answer the question and rule in a way that is sensible and wise and sustainable, and they're not.
So the byline on the book, how a selfish ruling class is bringing America to the brink of revolution.
Yes.
Do you think we're that close?
I think we're in the middle of it.
Yeah.
We just elected Donald Trump president. What? I mean, this is what got me to write the book. Like Donald Trump, who I've known for 20 years and always sort of liked because, like, why wouldn't you? I think he's funny as hell.
Did you ever think he was racist or any of those things?
No,
like, put aside the Twitter part.
Dumb. I mean, look, I think on some level everybody is bigoted. I mean, the human heart is dark and light, and you know it's a patchwork. But like, talk about. I mean, look, if he has a policy, if he were to get up and say, you know, the problem is that this one racial group is screwing everybody else. And in response, we need to crush them. We need to attack them in public and then make it much harder for them to get jobs, government contracts, get into school. That would be racism.
That's racist, yeah.
Oh, wait, that's what our ruling class has been doing for 35 years. So, you really want to have a conversation about racism? Racism is attacking people on the basis of their immutable characteristics, which is like how our government operates. It's totally wrong. So yes, there's a lot of racism. Is Trump an offender? Probably, who isn't? But the actual structural racism that hurts people and rewards others on the basis of their skin color, something I thought we got rid of 50 years ago, that is not being perpetuated by Trump. It's being perpetuated and defended and celebrated by his critics. Don't lecture me or anyone else about racism if you're pushing that crap.
Isn't that the irony?
It's unbelievable.
Half the guests that you have on your show are the people who are actually trying to inject racism into the system.
Literally.
With quotas and the rest of it.
Of course. And then, you know, why are they doing this? You know, it's a complicated psychological phenomenon, but at root, it's much easier to maintain power when you divide your opponents, when you divide the country into warring tribes based on characteristics that don't change and therefore can't be resolved. You know, this is how the British ruled India. This is the problem with Rwanda. I mean, this is like a very well-known phenomenon. But anyway, yes, it's all projection and displacement. It's like whatever I'm doing, I'm accusing you of doing. Like, I can't believe, you know, whatever it is. And it's actually Orwellian. Because it's not a lie. It's the mirror image of the truth.
Yeah, and this is what you're fighting constantly on your show.
Well, it actually gives you a headache. Like, I have a bunch of kids, and they lie because everybody lies, and you especially lie to the people you love because you care about their opinion most. So kids lie to their parents, like it's a feature of it. But a child's lie is very recognizable because it's always 3 shades off from the literal truth. Mm-hmm. So it's like, you ate 10 Oreos. No, I just had 3. But no one's contesting that you ate the Oreos.
Right.
What they're doing is what all authoritarian regimes do, and Orwell, being the great genius in English ever, got right to the heart of it. He's like, you know, if I were dealing with a powerful leftist, I would say, you ate 3 Oreos. He'd be like, no, actually, you did. You ate the Oreos. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to punish you. It's like, what? No. That's it's actually much more effective and manipulative not to grade the truth and distort the truth, but to tell the opposite of the truth, because it throws the other person completely off.
Yeah.
Off balance.
And that's then why they hate all of the supposed minorities who walk away, who leave. There's nothing they hate more than a gay person that leaves, a black person that leaves,
really
an Asian person that leaves. Yeah.
I can't imagine. I have, just because of my job, I mean, I know a lot of people who dissent from the orthodoxy within their group. Because I try to have them on because I think they're brave. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm not involved in any of these debates. But like, if you're a gay guy who's like, you know what, I'm not really on board with this. What happens to you? It's, and I have deep sympathy for that.
Have you seen my Twitter lately?
Well, no, I haven't. I would never go there because it upsets me. I think in the end, the individual has a right to make up his mind. You can control what I do, okay? Societies get to do that. They get to control the behavior of the people who live within them. You're not allowed to sleep in a crosswalk. Sorry, we don't allow it. Fine. What you can't do is control what I think. That's not allowed. That crosses the line from order to totalitarianism. And all of a sudden, for the first time in my life, that's what they are not simply attempting, but demanding.
Yeah. So, all right. So then that's a perfect segue to the technological part of this. Because I think the last time I was on your show, this is what we discussed. Just what's going on with Google, what's going on with the algorithms, are people being shadow banned, et cetera, et cetera. I think there's plenty of evidence that, yes, this is all real. What is your solution to this? I suspect you don't want the government coming in and fixing this, do you?
I don't know.
Or is this a unique case now?
I think I hate to use the term existential threat because it's so banal and overused, but actually it is an existential threat to the ability of the U.S. government to run the country, to administer the democracy. Look, Google, there are 20,000 engineers making between $200,000 and $400,000 working right now just on Google search, just on that one feature of Google. 20,000. This is the most technologically advanced and powerful organization in the history of the world. Its technology and capabilities so far outstrip those of the Pentagon, for example, or the Chinese military, or the Russians, or any other group. This is the most powerful technological entity in the world which has a chokehold on all human information in English. So that is sort of all you need to know. I don't care if Jesus is in charge of the country. That's too much power for any entity to have. And it's a threat to the nation state, actually, and it's a threat to all of us. So, yeah, I think whatever it takes is what we need to do, like now.
Yeah. Is that a tough pill for a conservative to swallow?
No, they don't know. Are you kidding? Well, first of all, I would say not to go to motive. I hate it when people do that. But in fact, a lot of them are just flat out bought off by Google. Right. Google literally funds the antitrust think tank in Washington. I'm not making that up. Yes, I'm not. Speaking of Orwellian. No, but look, it's so asymmetrical, like all these debates are, because with liberals who are only about power, you just make the pitch like, look, we'll fund you. We're on your side. We're part of the coalition of the ascendant, so just like, shh, no problem. With conservatives, who are sort of like dog-like in their, market, you know what I mean? It's like, what, are you against markets? Do you want government control? Are you for regulation? Ayn Rand. And conservatives are like, oh my gosh, kryptonite, I'm sorry. You're right, you're totally right, Mr. Google. It's actually, and so I feel like I'm the only person who of course I'm conservative. Of course I'm not for regulation. Of course I believe in markets. But this isn't a free market. This is your version of capitalism. This is what you've been promising all these years. When two guys who run a company that's not even American, whose values are not aligned with the interests of my country, is in charge of the country? No, I'm not for that. Sorry.
I got to say this, man. I did not think that I was going to bring you in here and that I'd have Tucker Carlson agreeing with my friend Eric Weinstein about this, but that you're basically laying out the same case he's laid out.
It's too big. And sometimes I think, well, maybe I'm going crazy. Maybe I'm thinking about this too much and I'm becoming like the wacko who's like, you don't understand the threat. But actually, the deeper, and I know people who work there and I've actually spent a lot of time on it no, I don't think I'm overstating it. And by the way, I'm not temperamentally an extremist. I'm from Southern California. I'm a kind of semi-observant Episcopalian. I'm not like, the end is nigh. I mean, that's not the way I am.
Yeah.
But on this topic, I think I'm becoming that because I think the facts warrant it.
Yeah. What do you make of the whole shift, sort of what's happening with news and technology at the moment? That it's funny, I said this to you in the green room, but when I was doing a show with Peterson last week, I said, Tucker Carlson's on my show next week. The audience went wild, went crazy. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I hear from so many of these young people that they don't get their news from cable news anymore. I think you and Gutfeld are a little bit of a bridge, sort of, between mainstream and the internet thing. But that CNN has sort of become a joke. That just saying these things about cable news, that's already the punchline for young people.
And I spent many years at CNN hosting a show there, and had a lot of have friends there. I mean, the landscape changes. Technology, destroys and then creates. It's a very familiar cycle. I think cable news has remained relevant much longer than a lot of us who work in it thought it would. But that, of course, will change because, once again, technology changes everything. What's ominous is the next thing. I'm completely for digital media. I own part of a digital media company. But we've sort of wound up exactly not in the opposite place we expected to wind up. I mean, the promise was that this was going to diversify, the media and decentralize power over information. And of course, the opposite, Google controls everything. So without YouTube, where are you without YouTube? So we're actually finding ourselves more dependent upon a smaller group of people who hate free speech and hate our values. That's a very precarious place to be. Somebody needs to introduce competition into this space like yesterday, right now. It's the most important thing. Otherwise, we're going to find ourselves at the mercy of these commissars. Is that where you want to be? It's the opposite of where you want to be.
If only there were some influential billionaires
who
might be listening to this show.
So true. We're not going to name names, but whenever 2 or more people who've thought this through for 10 minutes get together, they mention one name and they're like, "When's he coming to save us?"
Well, now you said it's a he, but let's not get lost in gender pronouns.
Right on. Tucker Carlson. And Dave Rubin. I've grown to like that guy. He used to be a super douche, and now he's cool. I don't know how the hell he woke up. He was a raving leftist, and then all of a sudden he wasn't. He was like, wait a minute, this is all stupid. Once I eat, I pass out. Ah, dude. Pops is like that too. If he gets too full, he just falls asleep. Yeah, he did. He has a very good way of stating the situation. Pops? Oh, Pops eats like a mofo, man. Pops is a garbage disposal. All right. So, I wanted to, before we get on to the next video, I got an article here from the Daily Wire that I found a little bit interesting. The author's name is Ash, and her last name is Shao or Show. So I didn't want to say her name together because I didn't want it to sound like, well, I'm sure you can figure it out. All right. In yet another stunning display of media bias, NBC now acknowledges that it had information that undermined the credibility of some of the women who accused then Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh of sexual assault, but didn't report it at the time. On Thursday, Senate Judiciary Committee Chairman Chuck Grassley, Republican of Iowa, referred celebrity lawyer Michael Avenatti and his client Julie Swetnick to the Justice Department. Swetnick, in a sworn statement, accused Kavanaugh of drinking too much, acting aggressive towards women, spiking punch at parties, and orchestrating teenage gang rapes. Her claims were ludicrous on their face, but the left-leaning media, eager to torpedo Kavanaugh's nomination for fear he could be the deciding vote in overturning Roe v. Wade, ran with them anyway. MSNBC was the worst offender. I added that. She didn't write that. MSNBC was the worst offender. The network interviewed Swetnick, even though she said it up front it couldn't verify her claims. This is journalism malpractice 101. You don't put out possibly defamatory information you can't verify. Of course, the media was totally okay with doing this if it meant keeping Kavanaugh off the Supreme Court. They didn't care about the consequences to his family or his reputation. MSNBC interviewed Swetnick on October 1st. At the time, she backtracked on her key claims regarding Kavanaugh and undermined her own story. Once her story crumbled, Avenatti released a second sworn statement from an unnamed woman alleging almost identical claims as Swetnick. This was on October 3rd, 2 days after Swetnick was interviewed by NBC, but 3 days before Kavanaugh would be confirmed. MSNBC says it spoke to this woman 2 days before Avenatti released her statement and didn't seem to find her credible. The outlet said the woman told MSNBC a different story than was presented in the affidavit. Referring to Kavanaugh spiking the punch, "I didn't ever think it was Brett," the woman said to reporters in a phone interview arranged by Avenatti on September 30th after repeated requests to speak with other witnesses who might corroborate Swetnick's claims, MSNBC reported Thursday night. As soon as the call began, the woman said she never met Swetnick in high school and never saw her at parties and had only become friends with her when they were both in their 30s. This alleged corroborating witness then told reporters that she never witnessed Kavanaugh act inappropriate towards women, but said that everyone at those parties drank heavily. MSNBC again contacted this woman on October 3rd, the day Avenatti tweeted out her statement. At this time, she told the media outlet she only skimmed the declaration. The next day, October 4th, she texted NBC saying, It is incorrect that I saw Brett spike the punch. I didn't see anyone spike the punch. I was very clear with Michael Avenatti from day one." She also told MSNBC that she would never let anyone abuse women in her presence. MSNBC says Avenatti confirmed to them that the woman they spoke to on the phone was the same woman as the one in the new affidavit. But when confronted with the discrepancies, he said he was disgusted with the outlet and then added, "How about this on background? It's not the same woman. What are you going to do with that?" MSNBC says it received more texts from this woman disputing the sworn statement and again reached out to Avenatti, who said he had the statement recordings of her backing up that statement. He said the woman must have been confused by MSNBC's questions. Roughly 5 minutes later, the woman sent a formally worded text backing Avenatti, and MSNBC reported. "Please understand that everything in the declaration is true, and you should not contact me anymore regarding this issue," the text read. MSNBC called the woman again, and again she disputed the affidavit. On October 5th, she texted MSNBC once more, writing, "I will definitely talk to you again, and no longer Avenatti. I don't like that he twisted my words." Kavanaugh was confirmed the next day on October 6th. It is now the end of October, and we are just now hearing all of this from MSNBC. The outlet sat on the information that one of Kavanaugh's accusers disputed her own sworn statement presented by Michael Avenatti. This information would have called into question the statement from Swetnick, Avenatti's other client. This would also have called into question MSNBC's decision to air the interview with Swetnick, who changed her story about what she witnessed 30 years ago. MSNBC sat on this information, which would have undermined some of Kavanaugh's accusers, and is only now releasing it after Kavanaugh was confirmed and its interview was mentioned in a referral to the DOJ. Ain't that some shit? Wow. Leave it to MSNBC and the rest of the mainstream queers. Criminals, I should say. But they are queer. They're very strange, very odd people. Alrighty. So moving on to the next thing then, after I got that out of the way. Next, I think we're going to listen to Let me see. This guy.
All right. Thanks so much to everyone who could make it out here tonight. We do really appreciate it. I want to introduce myself. My name is Michael Lindner. I am the Vice President of the Young Americans for Freedom chapter here at Texas A&M. I am a graduate student in the Masters in Business Administration program, and it is an honor for our group to host such an incredible conservative speaker here tonight, Dinesh D'Souza. Dinesh is a writer, scholar, and public intellect. He has become an award-winning filmmaker. Born in India, D'Souza came to the US as an exchange student at the age of 18. Graduated Phi Beta Kappa from Dartmouth College. Called one of the top young public policy makers of our time, D'Souza quickly became known as a major force in policy through his books, speeches just as the one here tonight, and films. He is a man of searching and versatile intellect. He is a man who can bridge cultures. Dinesh D'Souza was born in Mumbai, India, and has truly lived the American dream. He moved to the United States to attend school on a Rotary scholarship, and following graduation from Dartmouth College, he went to work at the Reagan White House as a policy analyst. D'Souza has served as the John Olin Fellow at the American Enterprise Institute and the Fellowship of Robert Rishwain at Stanford University. He's been named one of America's most influential conservative thinkers by the New York Times, and he recently released a movie called Death of a Nation in August. It is now streaming on all platforms and available for purchase on Amazon. It was one of the most influential political movies of the year. This lecture tonight is part of the Young America's Foundation exclusive 10-campus tour titled The Dinesh D'Souza Tour, Fake History Debunked. The generous sponsors of this lecture tour ask that I share the following statement explaining why it is important that we all hear from such a great speaker tonight. Here it is. Students deserve to receive an education based on unbiased facts, not revisionist history. Sadly, too many students today benefit from a robust understanding of the ideas and events that shape our world, because too few schools offer perspectives that challenge the leftist worldview. This is not education, it's indoctrination. And it's not just unfair to students, it is dangerous. We are alarmed that today's young people are taught to believe that freedom, the great protector against tyranny, should be forfeited in pursuit of this progressive agenda. Sponsoring this 10-campus lecture tour to give you the opportunity to consider ideas that may not be taught or even tolerated on your campus. You will be hearing from Dinesh D'Souza today, one of the most intellectual, articulate, courageous scholars. We are pleased to partner with Dinesh and Young America's Foundation to reach thousands of young people to inspire you to pursue knowledge, challenge leftist information, and advance freedom and prosperity for all. May tonight's lecture inspire you to never stop learning. Thank you.
He's a man of a searching and versatile intellect. He is a man who can bridge cultures and understands history and scholarship and politics and theology and philosophy.
My guest this week is an author, a filmmaker, a former policy advisor to Ronald Reagan.
Mr. Dinesh D'Souza.
This American dream is a dream not just of economic opportunity or success, but it's ultimately a dream where you can be the architect of your own destiny.
I grew up in a different world, actually a world without America. And although I grew up without a phone, without television, without hot water, we had a car, but if you looked down the floor of our car, you could see the ground.
He's been described as an influential conservative thinker. He's a best-selling author, political commentator, and filmmaker.
The great man, Dinesh D'Souza,
a patriotic man.
No longer would I say that I live in a rarefied world of intellectual debate. I've seen the upside of America, and I've seen the downside of America. But at the end of the day, I wouldn't trade the United States for any other country. At the end of the day, my enthusiasm for American government may have dimmed, but my enthusiasm for this country burns brighter than ever. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, Dinesh D'Souza.
Howdy. I know some of you are looking a little surprised. You're like, howdy, this guy's really with it, man. He's got it all down. Pretty soon it's going to be Gig-a-Maggies. And if you're wondering why I'm so cool and how I kind of know the lingo, it's because I actually have a stepdaughter who goes here. Aha! So without further ado, Miss Juliana. I'm also thrilled to be here with my wife, Debbie. She's an immigrant from Venezuela, as I am from India. And what you're going to hear this evening from me is, well, you could call it the immigrant perspective. It's a different angle of looking at America, American politics, and American history. And we're doing this at a moment in which American politics has entered a very peculiar and even surreal phase. And trying to make sense of this divide, this Cold War, if you will. Not a civil war, but maybe a cold civil war, a secession of the American mind, one that occurs not between the North and the South, but one that occurs throughout the country, not just between so-called red and blue America, but inside every county, and in some cases inside every family, and in a few cases right inside the human heart itself, a divide over what this country is really all about. I was 17 years old when I first saw the United States. I remember the plane descending on JFK. I looked out of the window, I could see the New York skyline, I could see the Statue of Liberty. And a really strange feeling came over me. I felt in my bones that my life was going to be completely different from that moment on. I felt that I was moving from the margin of the world to the center. I recognized, even without ever thinking about politics, without knowing anything about America, that I was coming to a country in which I would be able to be the architect of my own destiny. I was moving to a place where I could write the script of my own life. And this to me was my American dream. This to me was what made America unique. And in all my interactions with other people, fellow Indians all trying to get here, one way or the other, I got a feeling for what that America's recognized worldwide to be special. I have a friend of mine who has been actually trying to emigrate here from Mumbai for, I think, now almost 20 years. And the poor guy has never been able to do it. And so finally on the phone, I said to him, hey, why are you so eager to come to America? He goes, Dinesh, I really want to move to a country where the poor people are fat. And for him, as for many, America represents abundance, the abundant life, the full life. And yet, I have seen in my own life the other side of America. If I fast forward to a few years ago, I was standing in a courtroom and I heard a bailiff bark out the following phrase, United States of America, versus Dinesh D'Souza. Now, that is not a phrase that any immigrant wants to hear. It sends a chill down your spine. I was in a situation, I had exceeded the campaign finance law in donating to a college friend of mine, and as a result, the full force of the US government, in that case the Obama administration, came down on me. Batteries of FBI agents, reading my books, going through my tax returns, looking at my bank records, going over years. And it's a very ugly process. I say that because here's the US government and here's me. Did you exceed the campaign finance law? Yes, I did. And I should receive the same penalty as anybody else who did the same thing. To which they reply, not so fast. We're going to get you on bank fraud. I go, bank fraud? They go, yeah, because you took your money out of your bank account. And I go, whoa. And then they go, we're going to get you on mail fraud. And I go, mail fraud? They go, yeah, because you put the check in the mail. And I'm like, whoa. And I suddenly realized that there was a whole thing going on in which they were taking what I did, a simple act of trying to help a friend, misguidedly, but nevertheless, without any corrupt motive. They were redescribing the same thing 7 different ways and attaching a separate, serious federal charge involving prison time to each of these actions. The same thing redescribed 7 ways. And if you add it up, I was looking at years and years in prison, which they assured me will A, destroy your life, B, destroy your career, C, ruin your relationship with your family. And then they said, but we will drop these charges if you plead guilty and sign over here. And the moment you do, they hold a press conference and they go, see, he admitted it. He voluntarily said he did it. So in fact, they have legally bludgeoned you into submission. And by the way, this legal pressure applies equally whether you're guilty or not. And having done that, they triumphantly use your plea as proof that you are guilty. Now, I say all this because it's important to realize that when you watch the news, Paul Manafort, Michael Cohen, you have to realize that what you're seeing is the tip of the iceberg. All of this stuff is going on behind closed doors. And it's going on in every single case. So this is also America. This is the other side of America. And I would say this is screwed up America, and I've seen it firsthand. Now, for me, in a sense, the clouds did eventually part. A few months ago, I was in my office doing work, and the phone rang. I picked it up. It was the White House operator. Is this Mr. D'Souza? Hold the line for the President of the United States. Who comes on but Trump? And he was in a very Trumpian mood. He goes, hey, Dinesh, I'm sitting right here with John Kelly. You know John Kelly, don't you? I'm like, I don't know John Kelly. I know who he is, the Chief of Staff. And this was the moment in which I learned I was going to get a presidential pardon, which was a nice thing to get. And you know, I almost felt a slight tear welling up in my cheek because so many thoughts were running through my mind. Admittedly, the first thought was actually not even about me. As soon as Trump said, I'm going to do it, I thought to myself, this is a giant up yours to Obama. I saw that right away. But of course, the other part of it, it wasn't just that I would no longer have a probation officer monitoring my travel and come into my house. I wouldn't have to ask a judge for permission. I wouldn't have interminable commute. Forget all that. The most important thing was it gave me my American dream back. So it restored, in that sense, my full American dream. And so, having seen all of this up close, I now want to pull back and try to give a feeling for what's going on in America now. Now, I'm a product of the Reagan years. I became a conservative in the 1980s. Why? Because I saw this character, Reagan, a genial, affable, self-deprecating guy, a guy with a wonderful and you may say collegial sense of humor. At one point, this was in the 1982 recession, Reagan was cornered by Sam Donaldson of ABC News. Some of you will be old enough to remember. Sam Donaldson was, you know, an adversary of Reagan. He was sort of the Wolf Blitzer of his day. And he goes, Mr. President, in this recession, you have blamed the media and you have blamed the economists, and you have blamed the Democratic Party, but does any of the blame belong to you? And Reagan goes, well, yes, because for many years I used to be a Democrat. And I recall this episode now almost nostalgically because I remember even Sam Donaldson started laughing. There was a kind of reciprocity between the two men, and it was a time in American politics where you'd have Reagan over here, you'd have the Democratic Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, over here, and the two of them would fight it out on policy, but they could totally be envisioned having a Guinness afterward. In other words, there was an Irish camaraderie between them, and that was the America of then. But that is actually not the America of now. And part of what we have to think about isn't just how is it that we have all this craziness? I mean, Antifa patrolling the campuses, threats of violence, talk about kicking the opposition. Where does all this come from? What's really going on? What really seems to have happened at the beginning is people are looking at the same thing, but they are interpreting it in such different ways that you almost wonder if there are two different lenses in the camera. You saw this with the Kavanaugh hearings. You saw the same facts were put out there for everyone to see. There were no additional facts that one side had, the other side didn't know. But nevertheless, two sets of people totally convinced that they're totally right. And you see this in media. If you're conservative and right-wing, you're watching Fox News, Rush Limbaugh, talk radio. If you're on the left, NPR. So suddenly you have different media being supplied to the two different sides. And I want to try to get into this and try to explain what's going on. What's changed in America? Well, one thing that's changed is that in the 80s, I think, by and large, the debate in American politics was not about goals. It was only about means. And what I mean by that is if Reagan stood up and said, I believe in an America that's strong. I want an America that is prosperous. I believe that technological capitalism creates the goose that lays the golden eggs. I want America to have influence all over the world, and I want America to be an example to the world. And I want people to look up to America, and I want America to be a magnet for all of humanity. I want the American recipe to be what everybody wants. And if this was the goal, you'd be hard-pressed to find a Democrat who really disagreed. Now, there were disagreements, but the disagreements over things like this. If America is prosperous, how should we split the pie? How should we divide up the golden eggs, if you will? Or if America is going to be an example to the world, should America do it alone, or America seek allies who can work together with us to achieve those goals? But the disagreement, as you can see, is over tactics and not over objectives. Today, the reason it's difficult to have bipartisanship, it's difficult to meet halfway, is it appears that the two sides want to go in opposite directions. So this is not like the 80s. In fact, this is more like, I would say, the 60s, but I don't mean the 1960s. I actually mean the 1860s. When, in fact, you had two sides who had radically irreconcilable goals. And it was very difficult in that time to figure out how do you find the middle. Now, having lived through America now for the better part of almost 2 generations, I try to ask myself, what is it in America that's really changed? And let me point to one thing that I think is helpful in trying to understand what we call the culture war. One thing that's changed dramatically is that from the beginning of America, from not just the founding, from before, all the way until I would say the 1950s, maybe the early 60s, there was a moral consensus in this country that there is a moral order in the universe that is external to us, that makes claims on us. Our job is to try to live up to the standards of that moral code. Now, there was some disagreement about what the moral code is. Obviously, Christians and Jews might disagree about what it is, but let's just take the 10 Commandments as representing this external moral code. If you went around in 1950 and approached Americans and said, hey, do you think the country would be better if everybody followed the 10 Commandments? 99% of all Americans would go, yeah. And it wouldn't even matter if you were Christian or Jewish. You could be a non-believer, and you'd answer, yeah. So this represented a a shared agreement across the whole society. It reflected, if you will, the deep Judeo-Christian roots of this country. Now, this is not to say that everybody obeyed the moral code, but even if you didn't, even if you fell short, that was your standard. That's what you measured yourself against. So what has changed in America now, as I see it, and I see it especially with young people, and I'm sure it's true of many of you, is a shift in the source of morality. Now, a lot of older people don't understand this, and they will say, morality has gone to hell. America has seen a moral decline. And what I'm saying is something a little different, not just that we've seen a decline in morality, what we have seen is a change in what morality is and where it comes from. So a change in the locus or roots of morality. In other words, the change can be summarized this way, that in the past, Americans believed that morality is out there, and now we believe, many of us in America, that morality is in here. Morality now doesn't come from the external code, it comes from the inner self. And that means that when young people today, many of you, face a choice, and I don't just mean a deep moral conundrum, any choice. Should I, Juliana, go to law school or become a poet? Do I, Jim, love Sally? If you're trying to answer that question, how do you do it? Do you consult your parents or your pastor or God? Well, for a lot of young people today, none of the above. You dig into yourself, you look deep into the sort of inner self, that little being inside of you, to guide you authoritatively about what you should do and how you should be. And this is something that is kind of new in the world. In other words, the self as the ultimate adjudicator of morality. That's something kind of startling. My father would really not have understood it. I remember, in fact, going years back to my dad and saying, "Hey, Dad, I have been thinking about becoming a writer." He goes, "Son, I really think you should do something useful with your life." And I had to try to explain, because he said, "Isn't it a fact that you have been admitted to the Wharton Business School?" And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, why aren't you going?" I go, "Well, Dad, so you see, I kind of feel called to be a writer." And what I was getting at was I was trying to describe the sense of self-fulfillment that I was searching in doing something that I really enjoyed. And my dad was like, "Let me summarize. You are saying that there is a little being that lives inside of you. Let's call him Little Dinesh. You appear to consult with this creature in making important decisions that will affect your life." And I realized in this conversation with my dad, it wasn't that he disagreed with me. He just didn't know what the hell I was talking about. He had no idea. Why? Because I was describing this morality of the inner self that was utterly alien to him, completely. A lot of the roots of our culture war are in this. Because when you think of an issue, whether it's pro-life, abortion, gay marriage, let's think about it. In the old days, if you mentioned gay marriage, someone would say, "What are you talking about? Are you out of your mind?" Consult the definition of marriage. Look at the external moral code. Remember that marriage has a lot of criteria. It has actually 3 fence posts. The first one is that both parties have to be adults. Second, there have to be 2. There can't be 7. Third, you have to be unrelated. You can't marry a sister. So there are all these fence posts that define marriage. And the fourth one is a man, one's a woman. So that's the external code. And to people who have been raised in that code, they don't understand why we want to pull up one fence post and keep all the others intact. Because if the argument for pulling up one is good, why not pull up all of them? Why have marriage at all? But of course, to the person arguing for gay marriage, it's not about that at all. It's ultimately about something like this. I don't know if it's nature, I don't know if it's nurture, but this is who I am. In other words, it's an appeal to the inner self. And the inner self is the adjudicator, the referee, the final word, and it trumps, if I can use that phrase, it trumps the external code. So to me, these are the sort of moral roots of what we're arguing about. And you can help to see why we can't argue. It's more like 2 ships in the night, because both sides are using a different moral lens. Now, into this complicated ethical thicket comes a large elephant in the living room, and his name is Donald J. Trump. Trump. And he comes in as president, and everybody is a little startled. Why? Because this is a very, to quote my wife, out there guy. He has a very unique approach to politics. Reagan was a man of priorities. Reagan would say, you can't change the world in 30 ways. You can change it in maybe 2 ways. Let's focus on the Soviet Empire, and let's focus on stagflation, which was a combination of stagnation and inflation. Let's focus on that. Leave everything else. Let it go. That's not Trump. This guy's fighting on every front. Here's tax reform. Here's the trade treaty. Here, let's nick away at Obamacare. Let's change the court. And while all this policy stuff is going on, let's swat Meryl Streep. Boom. Let's get us failing CNN, Saturday Night Live. Dude is fighting the political war and the cultural war both. Now, at the first glance, this appears to be insane. We didn't elect Trump to fight a culture war. But the truth of it is that Trump recognizes that the fight is not just between the Republican and the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party has 3 extremely powerful allies: academia, the media, and the entertainment industry. And this is the, you may call it, outer fringe of the Democratic Party that is actually more powerful than the Democratic Party itself, and does the work of the Democratic Party, but does it in the name of neutrality. And so this is what the Republicans are up against. The other thing that's going on, which I think is very troubling, is the gangsterization of American politics that has occurred really in the last 10 years. And by the gangsterization of American politics, I mean this. It is the idea that the person who disagrees with you isn't your critic, he's your enemy. You have to shut him up or take him out. When I was dealing with the US government, this is the Holder Justice Department and this is the prosecutorial agency in New York, it was very clear to me that if they could have imprisoned me for a $20,000 donation with no benefit to myself, if they could have imprisoned me for 10 years, they would have been delighted to do it. Their goal? Take this guy out. And people say, well, why would they want to take you out? And the answer was that just a few months earlier, I had made a movie about Obama, but it wasn't a critique of Obama's policies. I exposed Obama as a flagrant hypocrite. Why? He had been going all over the country saying, we are our brother's keeper. Very Obama-esque. And I went to Kenya, where I found his actual brother in a hut in Nairobi, where if you stretched your 2 arms, you would hit the walls. And walking through the muck, we sat down in an interview, and I asked his brother, what has Obama done to help you? And the guy goes, absolutely nothing. He hasn't lifted a finger to help me. And here I'm living in third world slumdog millionaire style poverty. So to put this on the screen, well, it upset the president. And I should have, I was kind of dumb. I was an immigrant in a way. I was like, I should have realized that the empire is going to strike back. Now, frankly, when I go to campus and I tell people this, they go, Dinesh, come on, be ridiculous. I mean, what makes you think Obama even saw your dumb movie? What makes you think he cared about it? And I go, well, the reason I think he cared about it is that right after the movie came out, vituperative attacks began to appear every day, attacking me by name on a website that happened to be called BarackObama.com. That's kind of where I got the idea that I had pissed him off. Now, the thing about Trump, Trump is sort of the anti-Obama. And the thing about Trump is that he has very striking human failings that, peculiarly enough, turn out to be political virtues at this time. For example, Trump has, I think he would admit, a Himalayan ego. He's unbelievably conceited. And in fact, in my recent movie, Death of a Nation, I have a movie poster, and somewhat provocatively, I decided to merge the images of Lincoln and Trump. And it gives a lot of people a double take. They go, man, Dinesh, what were you thinking? Come on, Lincoln, Trump, are you nuts? But then it occurred to me, and their point, of course, is that how dare you put Trump in the same image with Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln. But then it occurred to me that probably Trump feels the same way. He probably comes in and goes, what? I've been compared with Lincoln? The guy in the tall hat? Dinesh, what are you thinking? So Trump is an egotist. But when you're a president and you're trying to get stuff done and you're being flayed on every platform every second of every day, not just by the Democrats, not just by the media, not just by every comedian in Hollywood, you're being knifed by people in your own party. It's really helpful in that environment to have the kind of secure ego that basically keeps you untouched, even while all this craziness is going on. So that is part of what gives Trump the confidence to plow ahead. The other thing about Trump is, I think you may have noticed this, that if you attack him, he is emotionally incapable of not attacking you back. He loves to do it. He can't help it. And it doesn't matter who you are. You can be an absolutely insignificant, I mean, think of somebody like Omarosa. Everybody's nightmare. Certainly every Republican's nightmare. If Omarosa came in the room, every Republican would go under the chair and wait for the woman to leave. But not Trump. Trump's ready. And so with Trump, what happens is this urge to hit back is, I agree from a human point of view, it's kind of a deficiency. I mean, we don't teach our children to do this. We teach them restraint, self-control, pick your fights. But interestingly, at this moment, I think for the Republican Party, see, the Republican Party has been nominating one Boy Scout after another. McCain, Romney. Romney is such an unbelievable Boy Scout. I mean, if I were writing his college recommendation to Texas A&M, it would begin with something like this: not since Jesus Christ. Not since. Squeaky clean. But here's the problem. The moment Romney comes onto the national stage, within 5 minutes, the left makes him into Lucifer. You're greedy, you're selfish, you're an exploiter. Where did you get $200 million? And Romney is on the defensive, up against the wall, explaining, apologizing. Now you notice that nobody makes this accusation against Trump. Nobody goes, hey Trump, where did you get $1 billion? Trump has more money than Romney. How did you get $1 billion? You can't do this to Trump, because if you do it, he'll sit you down and explain to you that he has $2 billion. He's a lot richer than you thought. So with Trump, this desire to hit back, I think, reflects a tendency in the Republican Party now to say, okay, if you gangsterize one side, the other side has to get tough. That's the sad reality of the situation. In other words, would we like to live in the kinder, gentler Reagan era that I grew up in? Yes. But that era is not here anymore. Reagan wouldn't understand it. He'd be a fish out of water, because the political waters are too roiled right now. But the one guy I think who would be completely at home in America today is Abraham Lincoln. Why? Because the waters were even more roiled when Lincoln came in. And Lincoln realized, a very moderate man, by the way, that there was a time to be extremely tough. In fact, when Lincoln was first elected, he was surrounded by Republicans. I call them the rhinos of 1860, Republicans in name only. And they were like, Lincoln, there's trouble ahead. You have to get rid of the platform that we Republicans campaigned on just a couple of months earlier. And Lincoln was like, what? They were like, yeah, we campaigned on stopping the spread of slavery, but that's not going to work right now. What we've got to do is take the Missouri Compromise line, the Mason-Dixon line, and push it out to California. North of the line, no slavery, ever. South of the line, slavery, forever. This was called the Crittenden Compromise. And Abraham Lincoln said, in effect, he said, I will suffer death. In other words, what he said was, over my dead body. Why? Because Lincoln said, we just had an election. We put this very issue before the American people. The American people, through an electoral majority, have decided the matter. This is not a matter of my having a mandate. It's not even my mandate. It's their mandate. And my job is to carry it out. And that is what we Republicans are going to do. Slavery was not ended by the abolitionists. They had no power to do it. They didn't even know how to begin to do it. Slavery was ended by the Republican Party through the Union armies in 1865. That's what brought it to an end. And Lincoln realized that throughout that process, he had to be extremely tough, and he had to stiffen the spine of the Republican Party. In fact, it came to his attention when the Union Army began to deploy black soldiers that when those soldiers were captured by the Confederacy, they were summarily shot. The Confederacy did not execute white soldiers who were normal prisoners of war, but if a black Union soldier was captured, he was killed. And when this came to Abraham Lincoln's desk, Lincoln issued an executive order, in my opinion, the most barbaric order to come out of the northern side of the war. For every black Union soldier executed by the Confederacy, one Confederate soldier will be summarily shot. Now, why would a moderate man like Lincoln do that? The reason is that Lincoln realized that there is only one way to make them stop. You have to do to them what they are doing to you. And if you don't do that, they'll keep doing it. And to apply this analogy in a different context now, take Antifa roaming the campus, bludgeoning speakers, causing universities to cancel events, block this and stop that. If you let that happen, the bottom line of it is they'll keep doing it. Why? Because that's how they define success. Success is stopping a rival point of view from being heard. And so it is of supreme importance not to let that succeed. Very recently, Condoleezza Rice was given a graduation speaking spot at a university in New Jersey. There was a protest. We'll disrupt her speech. We'll shout. And Condoleezza Rice, very ladylike, withdrew. I don't want to speak at any college that doesn't want to have me. And all the Republicans would cheer, very ladylike, very gracious, wonderful, what an example. But that's not my view of the matter. My view of the matter is that this is a disgraceful abdication. Why? Because if Condoleezza Rice can be canceled and speaking on a campus, no conservative will ever set foot on that campus again. If she is too much for them, who is not? And so what we have in America today, and we all know this to be true in our hearts, whatever our politics, there is a chill wind blowing through the world of American culture, politics, and ideas, and it suffocates you in saying what you think and being who you are and being able to speak your mind. Now, the more conservative you are, the more you feel this pressure. But every independent thinker who is not a slave to what you are told is going to feel this to some degree. And my bottom line message, I've said a lot of things here, but my bottom line message is, it is a part of your own human dignity, it is a part of your intellectual liberation not to put up with this nonsense anymore. And that means you have to figure out ways to undermine the culture of intolerance. And hey, people tell me, oh, Texas A&M's a conservative campus. Yes, it is, but it's even here. And the fact that there is the chill wind even here means you can just imagine how bad it is in other places where the left has more of a, not just a dominant position, a monopoly. When I was an undergraduate at Dartmouth in the early 80s, I could have named 10 conservative professors off the top of my head at Harvard. I knew them by name. I read their work. Today, I'd be hard-pressed to name one. And to my knowledge, there's not a single outspoken conservative in that entire university. They're having a big law case right now about diversity, and they keep chanting diversity this and diversity that, and we want to have gender diversity, and we want to have racial diversity, but the one kind of diversity they'll never mention is intellectual diversity, because they have very little of it. And that's the most important kind of diversity on a college campus. So I leave you with the thought that intellectual liberation and a way to understand what's going on. Here you are insulated from the world for 4 years, and your task is understanding. There'll be plenty of room to do other things later, but your task now is to concentrate on what's going on in the world and make sense of it, and you can't do it if your mind is being suffocated in this way. The Nazis actually called it Gleichschaltung. And I don't make the analogy lightly. I was actually in Munich and Nuremberg a few months ago filming Death of a Nation. And I saw an interesting sight in all these museums. They were talking about the Nazi era of people draping the swastika flag off their balcony or doing the Heil Hitler salute. And I watched it for a while, and I'd seen it in the war movies, but I'd finally asked the question to myself, I go, why do that? Why do Heil Hitler? Where's Hitler? He's not there. Who are you heiling? Why are you flying this dumb flag off your balcony? What are you trying to convey? What are you communicating? And then it hit me. What the family that puts that flag off their balcony is communicating is, I am a humble sycophant. I am a non-troublemaker. Don't look to me to think for myself. What I'm signaling by this flag is if you tell me what to do, including kill a bunch of Jews, I'm ready. Just tell me how many and where and how to do it. So in other words, what this signals is conformity. I will march in lockstep. And what we in America call political correctness now, that's our Gleichschaltung. That's our enforcement of an ideology so rigid that if you're at Google and you write a memo, they'll fire you. And if you're in Hollywood, you write a script that runs athwart the studio bosses, they'll make sure you never work in that town again. And if you're a young professor looking for tenure at Tulane or Oberlin, they'll make sure that your career is squashed. This, to me, is the ugly face of America. It's not the America I fell in love with when I was a kid. It's not the America I believe we want. A lot of our politics now is over which America we're going to have going forward. And I want the America of big possibilities and abundance and choosing your own life and thinking for yourself. An America in which we are all ultimately free to dream our own dreams. Not the dreams of my father, but my own dreams I can dream for myself. It's what Reagan called, in a beautiful moment, morning in America. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's great to be at Texas and A&M. If I was at Berkeley and the whole crowd stood up, I'd be looking for the exit. So I believe we have some time for questions, and let's
absolutely.
get started.
I'm going to kind of host a Q&A over here. If anybody who has a question, if you want to come kind of file in from the back there, come on down and just stand behind this pink line. Really appreciate it. Thank you. And whenever you're ready.
All right, let's get started.
Yeah, come on down. All right, how are you?
Doing great. Always enjoyed your movies and all your books, and you're quite an inspiration, especially for many of the people in our Tea Party were part of the auditoscopies that were part of Obama's era. So we really look to you for the inspiration of being able to steadfast through some of that persecution. One question I have is, when they say when you don't have safety, where you can't leave in the old days, you couldn't leave your ranch and know that it would still be there when you got back, and you had no liberty. And we're kind of seeing that now, where we're afraid to step out and be political, to be outspoken, to know that we're going to have a business when we return home, so to speak. And we are, in a sense, losing some of our liberties without having even left our homes. We're seeing a situation where it's hard to be outspoken, and it's easier just to not even be in business in some cases, take your toys and go home. That's one of the biggest downfalls that we're seeing right now, is so many people are taking their toys and going home and not playing a part in the capitalist system. I'm really happy that our economy is doing well, but there's still people, what are your words of advice for people who want to try to persevere, such as yourself, and be able to be outspoken and not worry about their ranch not being there when they get home, metaphorically?
That's a very important question, and I think this is actually the fear that has been spreading, particularly in Republican ranks, over the past 2 decades. In other words, for a lot of Republicans, they felt they were kind of like the wildebeests on the Nature Channel. And that is to say, you're going to be eaten, but you hope it's going to be last. And so there's a sort of a frightened tendency. And by the way, this was actually delightful to the left, because they kind of had the Republicans where they wanted them. This is kind of why Trump is so unmanageable, because Trump has no sense of this. Trump basically, not only is he's the wildebeest who actually charges against the lion, and the lion begins to retreat. I have found in my own life that there's a certain safety in being completely on the front line. Now, this seems absolutely crazy. My wife doesn't totally agree with me on this. But my view is that, for example, when I was in the confinement center, locked up for 8 months overnight with hardened felons, I realized that there's only one guy in this entire group of 160 of us, all sleeping in dormitories. And some of them white-collar guys, but many of them not. And I realized there's only one guy in this entire group who's going to walk out of here and have his career just the same as it was before, and that's me. Why? Because I'm a public figure, and everybody knows my case. And so if I come out, people aren't going to say, hey, you're a doctor and you overprescribe pain medicine and you'll never get another patient again. Your career's finished. You better go sell real estate. That was the condition facing white-collar guys in confinement. Their lives were destroyed. But mine wasn't. Why not? Because ultimately, my case was public. It was out there. And in fact, when Trump came on the phone, the first thing he goes to me, he goes, man, he goes, you know, I've known about this case for a long time. He goes, man, you got screwed. He knew that before he became president. Now, it took Senator Ted Cruz to put the question to Trump and say, hey, will you pardon this guy? And Trump goes, done. Done. So be brave. It can pay off.
Thank you. Hey, Dinesh. I'm a big fan of your work, but I do have one question. I've been following your stuff ever since before 2015, but I was wondering, in the GOP primary, if you don't mind me asking, who did you vote for?
Well, this question actually is a question that I not only don't, it's not that I don't want to answer, I can't answer because in the GOP primary, I couldn't vote. See, when I was convicted of a felony which took away all my rights, so I couldn't vote. Now, I made a movie, Hillary's America, and I will say my wife and I were actually married by Rafael Cruz, Ted Cruz's dad. And I mentioned this just to give you an idea that's a little bit where our politics are. But the moment that Trump became the nominee, I came on the Trump bandwagon. Why? Because I know American politics is fought in teams. And at the end of the day, it's a team that makes things happen. And so I was never a Trumper or any of that. And I must say, I've been amazed at Trump's ability, almost single-handedly, to take on what would seem to be invincible odds and still keep standing. I mean, controversies that any other Republican would be down on the floor. And this is what has surprised the left. Okay, we got Trump, Stormy Daniels. Okay, Stormy Daniels. And Trump is like, Stormy Daniels, what else you got? So,
thank you.
My question is a simple one, Dinesh. I agree with you when you said tonight that the left owns the educational institutions in America. And given that, I have a hard time not being cynical about the future of our country. What can we do to turn that around?
In the longer term, we have to transform the climate. And by this I mean not necessarily even transform the institutions, which may be really hard. If you could figure out a way to deliver educational services at a fraction of the cost, you would transform the whole system. The whole structure would begin to topple. But in the short term, there's a great incendiary power in facts. And this is actually why I enjoy speaking on campus. I don't like to bloviate. I try to put out the telling fact. So for example, on one of the campuses I spoke at recently, I stood up and I said, in 1860, the year of the Civil War, year before the Civil War, no Republican owned a slave. I said, not no Republican leader owned a slave, no Republican in the United States owned a slave. And the beauty of this kind of statement is first of all, it appears, to my knowledge, in no high school or college textbook. It has never, to my knowledge, been in a book. It's never been on the History Channel. It's not on Wikipedia. And yet, there it is, fighting words. And it's a scientific statement in the sense it's beautifully refutable. All you have to do is give me the name of one Republican who owned a slave. I would have to take it back. But to this moment, 2 years since I first said this, not a single valid counterexample has surfaced. One guy wrote me from the University of Michigan several months ago. He goes, Dinesh, I gotcha. Ulysses S. Grant owned a slave, a solitary slave, mind you, on his wife's side. And I go, nice try, pal. And that's an almost touche, but I have to point out to you at the time that this happened, and in fact it did happen, Ulysses S. Grant was a Democrat. So Now, the beauty of this kind of stuff that I'm talking about now is young people can check it out. If I say that the racist Dixiecrats never became Republicans, 95% of them remain in the Democratic Party, they died as Democrats, you could pull out your phone and check it out in 5 seconds and see if what I'm saying is true. So the incendiary power of facts and the ability to check them out very quickly allows you to call into question whole narratives, massive works that have been produced by BS artists of great subtlety and cleverness and elaborated over decades can be knocked down with a single battering ram of facts. And a lot of my movies and books are aimed at doing exactly that. So that's, to me, a first step.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Dinesh, a little nervous, but so you pointed out that there's been a change in morality. If you could pick a point in time, where would you say morality began to change? For me, I say it really started when we began redefining marriage, which I believe affected the family, the most fundamental piece of society. What's your take on that?
My take on it is this, that what could be called the new morality, the morality of the inner self, it was there in Western culture even 100 years ago. 100 years ago, you'd have to go to the left bank of Paris and Greenwich Village in New York to find bohemian communities which appeal to this new morality. But it was not mainstream. It was confined to those enclaves. And what really changed starting around 1960 is that this bohemian morality, which was considered weird, outlandish, whacked, began to permeate into the mainstream of society. And that was the popularization, you might say, of bohemian morality, which has now become, you may say, our morality. Okay?
Thank you.
Hi, Dinesh. I'm Sanjay. As a conservative Indian American student here at A&M, I really look up to your political significance. And I was wondering, what type of tips do you have for students like myself to gain that level of political significance?
The question is how to educate yourself as a political conservative. And I think the answer is to stay enmeshed in the world, which you are, but also to recognize that there are important thinkers and important books that don't answer immediate questions, but that do answer permanent questions. When I was in my 20s, there was no Fox, and I didn't look up to radio hosts. My heroes were people like Irving Kristol, and Solzhenitsyn, and Friedrich Hayek, and the economist Milton Friedman, and William F. Buckley. And so these were figures of philosophical, historical, economic, intellectual weight. To me, one of the saddest things about today is I look around the world, and I look around at the American landscape, and I don't see replacements for those figures the way they were then. Whereas today's Hayek, for example. And so the charlatanism of our own day is more difficult to take on because we don't have the figures to do it. So I would recommend that you try to develop your mind at the philosophical level as well as at the contemporary level. And that combination, which is the key to my books, they're all anchored in history and philosophy. When I do debates, even with atheists about God, I don't appeal to the authority of Scripture. I appeal to history, philosophy, anthropology, modern physics. And so doing it that way, you speak a common vocabulary that the other side can understand. So I would suggest pushing in that direction.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Howdy. So I noticed, you call this tour the Fake History Debunk Tour. Here at Texas A&M, I'm a history major. The reasons for that, or the wisdom of being a history major, may be questionable. But just as you pointed out, your books are based around history and philosophy. And my experience so far throughout A&M and much of what I've seen in academia is in the revisionist category, the revisionist thought. How can I, as a conservative, combat that? How is that going to be done through the academic field, or is this going to have to be done through other mediums?
Excellent question.
Another way to frame the question is like this. How do people come to know things that aren't true? And the answer is something like this. A lot of our contemporary debate is based upon premises that are themselves never questioned. So let's say, for example, someone goes, Trump is a fascist. Now, this idea is based upon a bigger idea that is not stated. Fascism is on the right. Fascism is on the right. If fascism weren't on the right, it would make no sense to call Trump a fascist. If fascism were a leftist phenomenon, calling Trump a fascist would make no sense. The idea that fascism is on the right is embedded in I learned it as an undergraduate in college. Now, the reason young people come to know things that aren't true is that a professor writes a book, which is then acclaimed by his like-minded fellow professors whom he asks to write blurbs on the book. Great book, wonderful book, path-breaking book. A new understanding of Nazism will never be the same. And then pretty soon the New York Review of Books writes a review in the New York Times, and NPR then interviews the guy, and suddenly he's on the History Channel, and then Michael Moore comes rolling in to make a documentary on the guy, or a feature film. So what happens is you, the ordinary guy, then go, wow, fascism must be on the right. Why? Because my professor said something about it. I walked into Barnes & Noble, I saw a book about it, I heard something on NPR, and then I put in Wikipedia, there it is. So even though that's the same bullet ricocheting off 7 walls, and coming at you from different directions, you go, wow, it's confirmed. It was here, it was there, it was everywhere. It's got to be true. And this Dinesh guy's got to be lying to us. This is what our fight is all about. Almost all of what we call history is progressive history that was written by a revisionist school of progressives starting in the 1940s. I mean, progressivism goes back to much earlier in the century, but I'm talking about the progressive domination of the textbooks. And so after World War II, many progressive scholars who, by the way, knew that fascism was on the left, they had been there, they had seen it, but they go, if people think this in the future, it will make us look bad. We need to redefine fascism. We need to move it into the right-wing column. We need to be able to use it against our political opponents. And so this cunning act of sort of intellectual massaging, it's not outright lies, it's spinning the facts in a way favorable to your presuppositions. And what historical era hasn't done that? What historical community doesn't do that? So part of, I think, today is to revise the revisionists, to apply academic standards, but we live in a culture where you've got to get the message out. That's why I make movies. I was a think tank guy for many years, and then I go, I'm reaching a very limited audience. The left is making movies, not just documentaries, they're making romantic comedies and thrillers, they're smuggling political messages into all that stuff. So, gee, I gotta make movies now. How do I make movies? I'm at the American Enterprise Institute of Hoover, it's really hard. Then I was like, well, Michael Moore can do it. That guy's really dumb. If he could do it, how hard can it be? Okay, next question.
Thank you. This will be the last question here.
Hey, Dinesh. Big fan of your work, so thank you for coming out. I'm currently interviewing at medical schools right now for next fall, and at these interviews they always ask us, or they always tell us that the healthcare system is messed up, and everything costs too much, and what we would do to fix the healthcare system in America. And so, as a prominent conservative and as a former political advisor for Reagan, I was wondering what are some of your public policy prescriptions for the healthcare system?
The question is about healthcare. And what makes this debate so interesting is that the premise of the claim for healthcare reform is quite true. Medical care in America is really costly. Prescriptions are really costly. Operations are really costly. And if you actually review the bill, you're amazed at how simple procedures cost tens of thousands of dollars. Now the question you have to ask, which is always the hard question, is why is that the case? Now the Obama assumption, and it was an assumption never documented, never proven, is essentially this is the capitalist system run amok. But if you look at healthcare, you realize, first of all, that it is very different than any other capitalist transaction in one significant way. And that is that the guy receiving the service never pays. That's not true if you go into HEB
and buy a carton of milk, you pay. And the key to understanding why healthcare costs so much has to do with that. Let's do a thought experiment. Let's say we were to say that food is a right. Not exactly a controversial statement. If healthcare is a right, obviously eating is going to be a right. Food to live, that's a right. Okay, it's your right. And so from now on, we're going to say everybody has a right, an entitlement to food. And the government can't tell you what to eat. So when you go to H-E-B next time, you just decide how much you want. You fill up your cart. And so what's going to happen? Everybody's going to pile up their cart to the top. 17 cartons of milk. Now the grocery store, knowing this, knowing that people are going to overconsume, is going to say, this is fantastic. Let's raise the price. And so milk, instead of costing $2, now costs $17. And your grocery bill, instead of being $140, ends up being $780. But the beauty of it is you don't care because you're not paying. Some other guy is going to be paying. So what happens here is, if you really think about what's really going on here, is it is a collusion between you, the customer, and the grocery store to screw some third guy, who's the guy who's actually going to pay the bill. That's what's going on with healthcare. And Obama fully understood this, and Obama realized that what he was portraying publicly to be a collusion between him and the American people against the evil insurance companies was actually the exact opposite. Because behind closed doors, Obama was meeting with the insurance companies and saying, listen, I got a deal for you. I want a government takeover of healthcare. You won't like that. However, here's what I'm going to give you in return. I'm going to force millions of Americans who don't have healthcare, some of whom don't need healthcare or don't want healthcare and certainly don't want to pay for healthcare, I'm going to make them pay. And that means tens of millions of new customers for you. So we have a great market here where we're going to force the consumer to buy. It's kind of like making a law that you have to go to the grocery store and buy broccoli. The government's going to make you do it. The broccoli industry would be pretty excited. Everyone's going to be forced. And so what happened is the insurance companies came on board, noticed that they were all running ads in favor of Obamacare. If they were the evil insurance companies that he was fighting, why would they support Obamacare? Because behind the scenes, you're just seeing the tip of the iceberg. Oh, we're reforming healthcare. So a lot of American politics is completely based on a supreme confidence in the stupidity of the American people. Sometimes justified, we have to admit. But here you are at a prestigious university, you have critical thinking skills. Don't be a sucker. Begin to realize that someone's going to pay. And the only question is, who's going to pay? So the left's definition of social justice, to broaden this discussion and bring my talk to a close, basically there are two competing definitions of social justice. The left has an idea that social justice is this, and I want to give you my idea of social justice. My idea of social justice is I keep what I earn, and you keep what you earn. Unless you can show that I'm ripping you off. If I am doing better than you or you're doing better than me, it's of no consequence. The brain surgeon has the same right to keep the revenues of what he earns as the street sweeper has to keep the revenues of what he or she earns. That's the key to social justice. There's a case at Harvard right now in which essentially Harvard, the most prestigious university in the country, is arguing that it has a right to discriminate against Asian Americans. Why? Not because Asian Americans are discriminating against anybody. Not because they even did so in the past. It is for the sole reason that they are outcompeting others. They are overrepresented as an ethnic group, and Harvard knows that if it wants to raise the level of underrepresented groups, it cannot do it without reducing the level of overrepresented groups. They never say it, but they know it, and they've been practicing this kind of racial discrimination behind closed doors for 30 years and lying about it. And the significance of this case is that they are finally forced, the lying Harvard admissions department is forced to say, yes, this is what we're doing, and now they're trying to convince Asian Americans, you got to be okay with it. This is not a case of saying that we're trying to undo the present effects of past discrimination.
This is screwing over a group that has itself been discriminated against, that was itself excluded by racist immigration laws, that was itself kept out of unions, by racist democratic unions excluded them. So a group with this history, and the same could be said of Jews, because the same thing is going on behind closed doors. So this is the dirty secret of progressive social justice. And look, at the very least, we need to have an argument about it, and that requires intellectual diversity. At the very least, we need to out the facts. And so if we're all going to be such cowards that we're willing to go along without even questioning the system, intimidated by, you're a racist. No, I'm not a racist. I'm actually trying to figure out what makes sense in the world, and if you're going to call that racist, there's something wrong with you, not with me. That's the atmosphere we need. I hope that I can invite you to think about it, and if you believe in it, fight for it. Thank you very much. Giga Maggie, see you later. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thanks so much.
My way back, gotta find my swampy home. Gotta find my way back, back to the swamp where I belong. Been gone such a long time. Mama, I'm coming home. Been gone such a long time. Mama, I'm coming home. Gotta find my way back, gotta find my Louisiana home. Gotta find my way back, way down south where I belong. Been 10 years in prison. Mama, I'm coming home. Where the bodies in the swamp were hidden. Mama, I'm coming home. No, I took the money. I took the money and I hid it good. No, I took the money, buried it deep out in them woods. 10 years in prison. Mama, I'm coming home. Where the bodies in the swamp were hidden. Mama, I'm coming home. Gotta find my way back, gotta find my swampy home. Gotta find my way back, deep in the swamp where I belong. Been gone such a long time. Mama, I'm coming home. Been gone such a long time. Mama, I'm coming home. Oh yeah. Get that crawfish pie ready, Mama. And that dilly gumbo. You don't know what I've been eating.